He studies a quiet blue world that has not yet learned the names of its nightmares. He runs futures through the furnace of his will and sees a slim corridor where saving this earth cools the storms that gnaw his own. He binds himself to a vow: aid without conquest, light without throne. He sets the phoenix step, threading a hairline in the webway with the Astronomican's chorus and a measured tithe of pain. The air parts like a page, and he walks through. A thunderless wound opens above Berlin, noon light shattering into auric rain. Glass sings along Unter den Linden as a figure in sunmetal strides out of a column of fire that casts no shadow. Cameras freeze, then erupt. Pigeons cartwheel in a wind that comes from nowhere and smells like ozone and old frankincense. He lands on a traffic island opposite the Brandenburg Gate, the ancient quadriga framing him like a heraldic seal. Auramite plates ripple with circuitry too fine to be human. A leonine face, gold and stern, looks out from beneath a crown that is not a crown, but a lattice of thought. He's taller than memory, but proportionate as a statue. He looks at the city, at its people, and the city feels looked after and weighed. A paramedic named Katharina breaks her ambulance 2 centimeters from another bumper and leans out the window. Her partner whispers a prayer he has not used since childhood. Tourists lift phones, live-stream chat feeds pulse into a billion pockets. Traffic drones hover higher and auto-tag the figure with labels that flicker, fail, and reset to a simple unknown. The sky groans. He turns his head. At 28,000 feet, a passenger jet rolls, flaps juddering, tail shivering in a wake it did not make. The aurora that wasn't there 5 seconds ago now is. A vertical ribbon of cold green cutting across the flight path. Engines cough. A cabin crew chief named Amadou grips a jump seat and smiles at strangers, so they won't be afraid. Behind him, a child's apple rolls under a seat and stops against a shoe. He does not raise his hand. He speaks, and his voice places a second architecture over the air, a scaffold of command vectors and gravity instructions. The jet stops falling. Its nose lowers with the compliant grace of a trained horse. Every rivet remembers the blueprints that birthed it. He walks, and the street lengthens to match him. He crosses 3 lanes in 2 steps and stands at the axis of the gate. The aircraft descends as if the world were a cradle. Tempelhof's old field weights itself in his attention. Grass leans flat. Ghosts of air brigades look up and salute. "Release wheels," he says, and the landing gear obeys the idea. Rubber kisses grass. The fuselage flexes. The aurora pulls back with the sullen reluctance of a stubborn curtain. The aircraft rolls to a slow halt, circling the faded letters that once taught a city how to breathe. Flight attendants cry where no one can see. Codex note: Auramite harmonics can encode vector authority across mass assemblies when carried on a Psi architect's voice. Berlin breathes. The gate shudders once and settles. He is still at its foot, the gold of him dimming down so human irises can stand it. The smell of burned pine resin slides away. Somewhere a bicycle finally falls over with a clatter that seems both comic and sacred. Police drones flex to caution yellow and build a perimeter. A Bundespolizei captain in a blue vest holds up both hands and gets a nod from the line. A man with a painted cardboard sign that says, "Welcome, Alien," stands on a bench and waves. He will later tell interviewers that he knew kindness mattered in the first 5 minutes more than fear. He looks left, and streetlights along the boulevard flicker to life in a pattern that exists only to him. He listens to a frequency no one else can hear. The Immaterium presses its forehead against the window pane of this world and fogs it with breath. A black SUV glides through the cordon. A woman in a NATO field jacket steps out, hair scraped back, eyes like a checklist. General Sofia Markov, Deputy Commander of the Very High Readiness Joint Task Force, carries her authority like a carbine. Functional, unadorned, lethal if needed. She stops at precisely the distance that shows respect without fear. "Sir," she says, feeling the word settle in the mouth like a coin. "This is Berlin. We have injured at the gate and a jet you saved at Tempelhof. I owe you thanks, and I need to know what else is coming." He looks at her and sees 100 scenes of service, steel bent toward mercy. "General Markov," he says, and uses her name because it will make the conversation easier for both of them. Something old and hungry sees this place now. We will keep it from eating. Another SUV rolls in, less steady. A woman steps out with the posture of someone who knows how long a secret should live and when to bury it deeper. Director Hannah Weiss of the B&D takes in the gold, the drones, the tourists, the gate, and files them into boxes that will later have names. Her mouth is a line that does not move when she speaks. "You are an event," she says. "Events can be exploited. Do you carry diseases we can't see? Do you intend to rule?" Her tone is not hostile, merely calibrated. "I intend to help," he says. "I will not claim a throne." He pivots, and the air currents change with him. "This city must be made safe in minutes, not hours. Your emergency services will follow my voice. Drones will vector traffic away from the Tiergarten and toward the inner ring. Hospitals must prepare operating theaters and blackout protocols. Cut power to Funkturm Berlin for 10 minutes. Weiss opens her mouth to ask why. The television tower at Alexanderplatz hums. The aurora above it ripples like fish muscle under a blade. She shuts her mouth and nods to an aide. "On it," the aide says into a mic, and the tower's lights die with the clean finality of a switch. He kneels and presses his hand to the paving stones. They are colder than they should be. He places 2 fingers at the seam between the city and the idea of the city. Gold light pulses from his gauntlet into the ground, not a flash but a seep. Veins lighting under skin. The arc from Brandenburg Gate to Museum Island glows faintly, as if history itself were a circuit laid long ago and now brought online. People step back, and the line holds. Tourists put down phones without thinking, and quiet forms where it shouldn't. A woman in a red coat begins to sing under her breath, a church tune that her grandmother taught her. 3 strangers pick up the melody in different languages and do not notice that they have never heard it before. The aurora clenches. It seems harmless at first, a light show with poor taste in colors. Then the edges get teeth. Between the green sheets of light is a black whiter than any snow, the kind of black that makes the part of a person's brain that still remembers lightning-split trees want to crouch down and put its hands over its head. A pigeon stalls mid-flight and hangs there like a pinned specimen. He stands, and the line of the city's river sketches itself in gold along his peripheral vision. He reaches into the noosphere like a surgeon reaching for instruments he designed and sterilized himself. He draws out a dozen overlapping geometries and throws them up where everyone can see. They are not symbols, not exactly. They are not meant for human eyes, but human eyes can look at them and not break. That is a gift. They hang over the gate like a diagram of how to be alive. "Stay behind the police line," Markov says, and people do, even if they had been planning not to, because something in the way she says it sounds like she has rehearsed this moment in 1,000 other scenarios. And this is just the one that arrived. On every screen in the city, a message appears, white on a quiet grey. Remain calm. Do not approach the light. Follow first responders. The font is one emergency designers tested for legibility in smoke. No one wrote the message. It arrives without metadata and doesn't trip a single intrusion sensor. That terrifies Weiss, and she lets the Terra live beside the statistical relief. A bus driver named Mihai pulls his 2-level coach into a diagonal that blocks a street so the elderly can move slower and be safe. A teenage boy whose screen name is N4L barges his e-scooter into a healthcare aisle and films. He will learn to be ashamed of that later and become a nurse. A tourist from Lagos takes off her headphones and hears the city itself breathing. The first thing comes through the light. It has too many wings and not enough decisions. Its feathers are knives that forgot to be metal. It smiles with no mouth and scrapes its throat across the rim of reality as if tasting enamel. Parents pull children close without looking, the way species that made it this far always do. The police line wavers and then holds. Chaos, he says. The word like a diagnosis and a memory. Undivided. Director Weiss hears the capital letter without being told it's there. Markov does not ask what it means. There is a target, and that is a kindness. The thing folds and refolds in the air like a bad idea trying to escape its essay. It heads for the gate as if drawn to triumphal arches by an old hunger. The gold geometries the Emperor drew thicken into grooves. The thing slows as if wading into honey that remembers the shapes of knives. He reaches out with a hand that is also a verdict and opens it. The thing's wings shear off in a clean, merciful cut, and each feather turns into ash that refuses to stain stone. The head, if it was a head, dissolves into an ache that leaves the air clean where it passes. He does not smile. He does not exult. He does not change expression because this is work, and it is good to see work done correctly. 2 more follow the first, then 7, then a little one made entirely out of sound that tries to hide behind a child's cough. He pulls the cough out into his palm as if it were a handkerchief and shakes it like a dusty flag. Sound becomes silence and then harmless air. Everyone nearby takes involuntary deep breaths and will not notice until later that this is the first time in years they have breathed all the way down. The Aurora leans closer. He feels the city through his boots. It is heavy where it should be. It is hollow where history broke it and was later repaired. It has seams like any load-bearing structure, and someone on the other side of the light has found them and is worrying at them with a claw. He lays his other hand on the stone and spreads his fingers as if telling it to settle. It does. A siren that was never built screams from the sky. The television tower's dead lights stutter and then go hard off, as if embarrassed at having tried to turn on again. In the reflected shine along the spree, shadows move the wrong way. General Markov, he says without looking up, seal the museums. Not for theft. There is a resonance there those on the other side understand too well. Director Weiss, cut cellular service within a square kilometer and redirect civilian devices to a local network that carries only civil defense vectors. Your techs will think they made it. Let them. Weiss takes half a breath to protest and then exhales logic. Do it, she says, and the city's devices nod to her like loyal dogs and fetch the version of themselves that she wants. A pair of police officers ask a priest in a black coat to step back. He clasps his hands and obeys, then makes a sign in the air that the old part of Rome would recognize. He whispers, "If you are an angel, you are not the sword we learned," and the whisper reaches the emperor as clearly as if it were spoken at his shoulder. "I am not," he says, enough voice to carry to the priest and no farther. The gate glows. The horses on the quadriga lift their heads higher, not because he tells them to, but because even bronze has a memory of triumph and responds to pressure. The Aurora snarls and shows its teeth properly for the first time. Behind the teeth is not a mouth, but a sermon. Words spill into the air that have never existed in German or in any other human language. They are not words so much as permissions disguised as truth. The stream tries to enter human ears and convince them they have always believed this. It tastes like righteousness pre-chewed. He cannot close every ear. He is one will and a city is a million. He can, however, make the air itself less conductive to this kind of current. He lifts his face, and the crown that isn't brightens along 1,000 capillaries. He hums a note no one hears, but everyone's inner ear adjusts to. The little bones in the skull choose a new default. The sermon's teeth slide and the bite lands on empty air. 4 people still hear it. They are primed for it, not because they are weak, but because their lives have taught them that surrender can be a kind of rest. One of them looks at the aurora with a gaze that is not her own and smiles a small, terrible smile. The Emperor sees her. He sees her name and the last book she loved and the burn scar on her left ankle from a kettle that fell when she was 9. He steps forward and speaks her name aloud. He tells the aurora gently that she belongs to this city, not to its mood. The aurora flexes, surprised at being contradicted with manners. The woman blinks and cries without knowing why. A friend holds her and swears. The oath is as good an exorcism as any when offered with love. On the edge of the cordon, a column of smoke rises where there is nothing to burn. It is full of faces and smells like hot iron. Children turn their heads away and then back because horror is a kind of magnet when you are new to it. The smoke writes and unwrites a sigil in mid-air. Word bearers, he thinks, and the thought is a diagnosis with a treatment plan attached. Chaos undivided. The missionary kind, the kind that likes to say it is merely telling you what you already know to be true. Identify yourself, Markov says to the smoke, because rules exist and you follow them so men and women can find their courage in the procedures. A voice comes, syllables stacked like bricks that forgot gravity. We are already you, it says. We are the proof that your statutes were always a joke. Send your leader, send your God. I will answer, he says. And the smoke laughs because it thinks it has arranged the terms correctly. He lifts both hands. The city under him hums again. The geometries above the gate rotate a quarter turn. He puts 3 small shapes into the air that look like toys. They are not. They are anchors designed to turn an open boundary into a controlled aperture. The aurora recoils with the instinct of an animal that recognizes a trap and hates it. The trap is not meant to catch. It is meant to shape. He does not want to drag the other side through. He wants to give it a mouth that can eat only air. He leans in and says something in a language older than the warp's favorite tricks. The 3 anchors ring like tuning forks and then go quiet. The aurora, forced into a circle, becomes a round wound. The smoke tries to slither through and finds itself politely redirected into an exit that is not here. It is an elegant solution and still it hurts. He feels the cost in the place behind his eyes where numbers line up to be counted and do not always equal what they should. He feels it in the golden throne across a gulf of realities, as if a musician he trusts lowered a note to reach this one. He had promised himself restraint. Restraint is expensive. Hold, he says to himself, and the command lands. An earthquake that is not an earthquake walks down the spree. Water stands up and looks around like a startled dog. Bridges creak. He turns and pins the river with a look. Down, he says, and the river considers its options and returns to its shape with mildly offended dignity. Director Weiss watches the civilian network reconfigure in her hand. She sees icons that do not exist and feels like someone borrowed her pen and wrote her best notes with it while she slept. She keeps her face still and finds the places where fear and duty intersect. At that intersection, she parks and gets out. What do you need from us? She says to him. crisp as new paper. It is consent in the form of a question. Choirs, he says. Not voices, intent. People in hospitals, churches, mosques, synagogues, kitchens, libraries. I need them to think about keeping. Any word in any language that means to hold without breaking. I will use that. Weiss blinks. You're crowdsourcing walled power, she says, making it sound like she is talking to a junior engineer. Yes, he says. It must be voluntary. Markov taps her radio. All channels. Civilians wishing to help should gather indoors. Think of loved ones you wish to keep safe. Repeat quietly, in your own language, a word for keeping. Emergency services will coordinate safe spaces. She hears herself, knows how this will play on tomorrow's talk shows, and does it anyway, because this is the battle and she is in it. The city changes tone. In apartments and stairwells and care homes, a murmur begins, scattered and sincere. People who do not pray discover that they remember how. People who do pray adjust without fuss. In a server room, 3 techs look at each other, feel foolish, and then each pick a word. Halton, Garda, safekeep. A janitor wheels her bucket into a corner and leans on the handle and says, softly, stay. He draws it in. He does not take. He accepts. A line of gold filaments runs from 1,000 rooms into the shapes above the gate. They thicken. The aurora shows teeth again and then thinks better of it. The smoke writes a new sigil and watches it be ignored. It has not been ignored before. A knife made of math slides through the aurora from the far side. It is clean and precise. It is meant for him and no one else. It is not a test. It is a first strike. He turns and lets it through the place in him where wrath would be if he were anyone else. It tears a strip from the gold at his shoulder. The strip frays into 100 blazing threads and then coils back in of their own accord. The wound aches with a cold that does not come from any weather this world knows. A child in the crowd sees the cut and yells, "He's bleeding," and begins to cry because heroes are not supposed to do that. The child's mother picks him up and tells him that heroes do bleed, and that is why we thank them. He notes the cut and the texture of it, and the signature it carries. Alpha Legion whispers are woven in the edge, not as authors but as carriers. Word-bearer's sermon is the stage. Someone smarter than the smoke has joined hands with someone louder. He tries not to smile at the challenge. It would be unbecoming. He wrests control back into the city with careful fingers. This is contained for now, he says. And it is true in the way that a tourniquet is true. Is it over? A reporter calls from behind a police barrier. Brave and foolish and necessary. No, he says, and the honesty holds the crowd like a net. Weiss's phone vibrates in a pattern no app uses. She glances. Her screen is a quiet grey with a single line of text. London, light. Cairo, song. Sao Paulo, shadow. She looks at him and he nods once before she speaks. It's global, she says. Spots lighting up like a bad constellation. Then we move, he says. But we do not move stupid. Markov watches the aurora's circle grip the air like a gasket. She has a sense of where the failure modes are and where she can put her shoulder under them. We'll stage at Tempelhof, she says. It's clear and we can control ingress. Local hospitals are already spun up. I want drones on Overwatch and jammers at Tiergarten margins. We treat this like a siege with moral injuries. He approves without saying so. It is better that she believes, knows, that the plan is hers. Authority flows more purely then. A convoy of blue light creeps in from the west. Ambulances, technical rescue trucks, THW wagons. A man from the fire brigade named Rosenfeld hops down with a coil of hose and a face like a bulldog in a sweater. He looks up at the gold figure and shrugs like he has seen worse. We can foam anything that needs foaming, he tells Markov. And we can cut steel if you need to make holes in things. He glances at the gate. Not that. We're cutting nothing, she says. We're holding. The aurora becomes a disc. It is still wrong, but it is wrong in a contained way, like a bad tooth capped neatly. People who are going to take selfies do not. People who are going to panic sit down and drink water. A man with a guitar begins to play very softly, and then stops, ashamed, and then starts again, because he realizes it helps. He points his chin toward Tempelhof and begins to walk. The perimeter flexes to let him through. He is not escorted, because an escort would be symbolism layered on symbolism, and the symbols are full enough. Instead, they move with him like a wake moves with a ship. Director Weiss, he says, your city has a shape. I will use it again. The museums, the island, the river, the gate, they form an axis. There are places elsewhere in your world that also have such a spine. We will name them and use them to build more circles like this one. We must patch your world in a pattern before the other side adapts. We have mapping, she says, already thinking of Rome and Jerusalem and Mecca and Varanasi and Kyoto and Canterbury and places that are not cities at all, but bridges that hold stories. Good, he says. We will need an index of sanctity that is not superstition and is not mockery. You will assemble people who can measure that without arguing themselves into helplessness. Weiss snorts once and then covers it by coughing. Academics, she says. Some, he agrees. And midwives. And the women who run kitchens no one notices. And the men who sweep stadiums at 3 a.m. Sanctity is often where other people are tired. He steps over an invisible edge. The feeling in the air changes. Tempelhof yawns before them, a field with a story carved into it. He looks at the old runway lines and sees vectors he can stack. He gestures and the lines glow faintly. No one is surprised anymore. Everything seems to pulse once, as if the city were a big machine turning over after a rebuild. Drones adjust altitude without pilots telling them to. Radios stop hissing and crisp up into the clean sound the manuals promise and never deliver. The aurora disk over the gate holds at a precise circumference measured to the width of a palm. The sky drops a shadow. It is long and thin and moves like a plan. A craft no one alive on this earth has ever seen lowers through a slit in nothing and parks itself above the Tempelhof grass as if waiting for a boarding call. It wears no insignia. Its angles tell the truth it intends to hide. Military, stealth curved, atmospheric optimized, with a belly that could carry troops or children or both. General Markov points before she realizes she is pointing. That, she says, that is not ours. Alpha Legion, he says. The word is a stain that refuses detergent. The craft's hull ripples. Panels open that were not there a moment ago. A shape unfurls from the underside and drops at a speed that makes physics blush. It lands with a knee in the soil and stands up in one unbroken movement. The figure is man-sized and man-shaped and the wrong color, a near black that eats the eyes. Its armor is a philosophy of ambiguity, rendered in ceramic and cunning. Its helm is smooth. Its voice, when it comes, is perfect German, learned from someone Weiss knows who is missing. Berlin, it says, and the syllables are almost tender. We brought you a mirror. The mirror is not glass. It is a membrane stretched taut in a frame that hums in frequencies only dogs should hear. Through it, another Berlin looks back. A Berlin where the circle around the gate never formed, where the aurora ate first and was not told not to. The people in that Berlin are doing the same things the people here are doing, only wrong. The Emperor takes one step forward. The Alpha Legionnaire tilts his head as if posing for a portrait he knows will last. Leave, the Emperor says. We came to teach, the Legionnaire replies. You taught us long ago that teaching is a kind of war. We learned. Markov raises her hand in a signal that means hold your fire and be ready to do the opposite. The mirror flexes, eager. The aurora disk at the gate tightens as if jealous. Across Europe, other auroras wake. We will need a plan, Weiss says, in the tone of someone who has already opened the file and titled it with the date and time. We will make one, he says. He tastes the cut at his shoulder again and reads the hymn stitched into its edge. He turns the hymn in his mind until it reveals the needle that wrote it. The wind turns. The horses on the gate, half a kilometre away, feel it and paw at nothing. The Alpha Legion craft shifts its weight like a predator testing a floorboard. He looks at the mirror and sees three things: a trap, an opportunity, a dare. He looks at Markov and Weiss and sees two people whose world is about to be broken differently than they fear. He looks at the city and feels a million small choirs humming. Then we begin, he says, and the field hears him and becomes a place of briefing. The mirror tastes the air as if air were an oath. The frame hums at a pitch that makes teeth itch. It shows a Berlin where people move like drowned things, and where the aurora chose to be a mouth. The Alpha Legionnaire stands at ease, as if demonstrating a product. He does not order fire, he walks. Grass bows under each footfall and rises untrampled. He studies the membrane like a carpenter studying grain. The runways behind him light faintly along their painted arrows. Do you know what this field remembers? He asks the Legionnaire. Bread from the sky. Corridors cut through hunger. Then learn a new corridor, the masked voice replies. Through consent. He lifts a hand and draws a small square in the air. The square is nothing, and then becomes a pane, thin and weightless. He lays it flat on the grass. It is a child's mirror, the kind you stick to a wall with a peel tab. He presses it with one finger. The child's mirror sinks into the earth like a coin into a pond. A second later, the big mirror shivers. Its surface gets ripples that move not across but inward, as if something underneath were breathing. Drones catch the moment when two reflections misalign. The wrong Berlin yawns, a page out of register. He tips his head as if listening to a song no one else can hear, and then hums a single note. The small mirror under the grass answers, and the big one tries to belong to it. The Alpha Legionnaire takes one step forward. Markov raises two fingers. Rifles that were at low ready go just a hair higher. Each muzzle a period at the end of a sentence everyone would prefer not to finish. He kneels and places his palm over the child's mirror. The runway at Tempelhof was a transit artery and a promise. He invites it to remember. Lines painted in the 40s become lines of force today. The membrane strained over the Alpha Legion frame finds itself threaded into a civic grid that does not wish to obey outsiders. Custody, not capture, he murmurs. The big mirror buckles at the corners. The wrong Berlin on the other side tries to push a child's hand through. The hand reaches and feels the texture of a different air. He presses his palm harder and turns his wrist a fraction. The hand belongs to this side again. A child stumbles out from behind a double image of the gate and falls into a medic's arms. His mother sobs into the medic's shoulder, like she is trying to become water. The Alpha Legionnaire does not move. Behind his smooth helm, something like satisfaction registers. You pulled a single soul, the Legionnaire says. We will pull a city. He stands and does not look at the rescued boy. He looks at the frame. He looks at the way its hum modulates when fear spikes nearby. He looks at how the grass under it is not crushed the way it should be, and how the air around it has no insects. This is not a window, he says. It is a habit. He steps to the side and gestures, tiny and precise, as if trimming a beard. The The frame's anchors lift a millimeter from the ground and fail to notice. He slides both hands as if sifting flour. The anchors realize they are not anchored. The frame thinks for a fraction too long about gravity. He supplies a different answer. The mirror tilts, only a degree, but enough to change the alignment with its feeder field. The wrong Berlin blurs. The Alpha Legionnaire steps in, accepting the dare. The membrane flexes around him like water around a swimmer. He does not stop the entry. He changes the rules of it. The frame's hum re-indexes into the airport grid. The mirror flow must pass through the little pane he sank in the grass. It is a throat the size of his palm. A tide tries to fit through a ring and loses its decision power, becoming a stream. The Legionnaire emerges fully, one boot finding soil that accepts him and hates it. He straightens. The mirror behind him now shows only sky. Creative, he says. Cruel. Conservative, he corrects. The Legionnaire unclips a baton from his thigh. It unfolds into a spear with a head shaped like a question answered too quickly. The head is veined with black that is not pigment but hunger. Vice inhales sharply. Blackstone, she says on a private channel, even though no one has taught her that word. It arrives with the taste of cold iron on the tongue. He does not draw a weapon. He leans and touches the little mirror under the grass one more time. The runway lines pulse. 4 rescue tents around the field suddenly feel like they have foundations. The Legionnaire's spear tests the air with little bites. The bites do not tear his wards, but they do make them sound bored. Shall we show them how their consent works? The Legionnaire asks cheerfully. A choice then. Save your circle at the gate, or save these. The spear jerks towards a cluster of paramedics transferring an elderly woman to a gurney. He is already moving. He crosses the distance in 3 steps that do not fit into the space human bodies occupy. He places himself between spear and gurney and takes the blow on the forearm. Blackstone eats. Auramite flares in disgust. The spear does not pierce, but the idea of protection loses a thin slice of itself the width of a breath. He clamps his other hand on the shaft. The Legionnaire tries to pivot and finds his hands answering someone else's lesson. He is not disarmed. He is taught. Enough, he says, and the spear thinks about compliance and does not like where it ends up. He lets go. He does not take trophies. The mirror behind them tries to sway in sympathy. He tilts the child's pain another hair. The sympathy has to pass through a small throat again and arrives too late to make a difference. Your trap is now a fence, he tells the Legionnaire. No one else crosses without my hand. A siren near the apron whines into a pitch only dogs and the Alpha Legion care for. The craft above them flexes belly doors as if in pain. The Legionnaire cocks his head. It must be infuriating to meet improvisers, he says. You built a state from doctrine. We build from maybes. You build from lies, he says, and from children of lies. He does not strike the Legionnaire again. He does something quieter and more final. He reaches, not with his arm, but with the authority he carries, and removes 2 assumptions the device depends upon: that the mirror's circumference is absolute, and that its anchor points cannot be claimed by anyone who didn't weld them. The frame finds itself unhaving rights. Metal groans with the distress of a contract voided. The membrane sags, then tightens into a circle the size of a manhole. The wrong Berlin on the other side shrinks to a coin. It does not disappear. It becomes a watch window placed under custodial care. Codex note: mirror planes repurposed as custody interfaces can be contracted by binding their boundary conditions to civic infrastructure vectors with known provenance. Control collapse ripples. Grass flattens then bounces back, leaving circles that will puzzle birds for days. People fall without being hurt and laugh from nerves and then stop, embarrassed. Drones reset with a clean chime. A tent pole snaps. A medic curses. Another catches the falling canvas, as if that were the only job in the world, and does it perfectly. He steps back and opens space with his presence. The legionnaire steps into that space and holds, calculating. The black spear tilts like a man thinking with his hands. Round one to the monarch without a throne, the legionnaire says. He gestures at the sky. But every classroom has more than one lesson. The craft above them blurs at the edges. Its panels fold in ways that insult engineers. It climbs without a pressure wake and becomes a line that becomes nothing. The legionnaire's helm nods once, and then he becomes a smear of black that remembers a man, and then no longer does. Markov lowers her fingers. Weapons turn from words to punctuation again. Weiss exhales and counts bodies with her eyes. No one missing. 2 concussions. 8 mild shock. 1 sprain. Rosenfeld the fireman mutters, "All right then," and starts directing his crew to put the tent back up, as if defying metaphysical stress with small good work were his private religion. He looks at the little mirror under the grass. It gleams faintly like a coin, hidden for a future seeker. He lets it be. "Inside," he says, and means the long hangar where maps and coffee and decisions live. Tempelhof's main hall becomes a command post without losing its memory of departures and arrivals. Cables run like roots. Screens bloom and show the world in splinters. Dotted lights mark London, Cairo, Sao Paulo, Lagos, Manila, Melbourne, nodes where auroras learned local grammar. He stands at a table that used to check passports and now holds a paper map spread flat. Weiss holds one edge down with her fist, as if paper might try to leave. Markov circles with a pen and dots likely sanctity spines. Rivergate temple circuits, mountain shrine bridge triangles, old fortresses with chapels that still light candles in storms. "We can cut power to towers that can be used as amplifiers," Weiss says. "We can geofence the circles and keep crowds from feeding the wrong structures. We can push a civic behavior protocol that asks for calm routines. Blinds down, kettles off, radios low, water in bathtubs. It sounds domestic. It's also counter-magic." "It is," he agrees. "Chaos wants heat and spectacle. Starve it." Markov taps the map at Berlin, then 2 more dots. "We create 3 rings," she says. "Inner sanctity ring based on your spine. Middle logistics ring for medical and response. Outer cordon for traffic and crowd actions. Each ring has a commander and redundancy. We do this in other cities as we can. We ask for help where we must." "We must," Weiss says flatly. "We will not have enough people to police memory and matter in every place." A woman in a white coat with grey in her hair and eyes like a microscope looks up from a laptop. "Dr. Farah Al-Husseini," Weiss says by way of quick introduction. "Memetics and computational linguistics." She hates that word. "I dislike memeticist because it hides ethics behind tech," Farah says without apology. "I can quantify which words lower arousal and which spike it. Your keeping protocol is good. We can also inoculate against specific persuasion patterns. Like sermons disguised as friendly advice," Weiss says. "Exactly," Farah replies. "We are already ingesting transcripts from the things the smoke wrote in the air. It's old structure wrapped in new texture. It praises your better self, then grades you. You conform out of pride. It spreads as self-care." Markov nods once. "So do we fight sermons with sermons?" "We fight them with practices," Farah says. "Short acts that feel normal and remind people they are bodies in rooms with other bodies. Boil water. Text a neighbor. Water a plant. Light a candle with a prayer you write yourself if you have none. We flood the day with acts that don't leave hooks." He listens. He looks at the map and the people. He looks at the coffee cups with lines of cold oil at their rims. He adjusts internal dials that the room cannot see. Your values will be measured, he says. You will be offered safety in exchange for obedience and glory in exchange for cruelty. My presence is a lever. It can move things you would not move alone, but you must choose to push. Markov crosses her arms. Then hear my push, she says. Martial law in Berlin. We establish a legal fiction. Temporary emergency sovereignty for the duration of these incursions. We search and disarm any cult elements without warrants. We shut down the public net in a radius and seize the towers. We impose curfew at dusk. We control what can be seen, because sight is a weapon today. Weiss answers before he can. You will lose the city's consent if you do that, she says. We need people to contribute attention and intention. You can't squeeze a choir and expect harmony. We must tell the truth at pace and trust people to respond. We need volunteers more than conscripts. We need civil liberties intact enough that our own people don't become the sermon's punchline. Markov does not flinch. And when the sermon says, your state cannot protect you, burn it down. What then? We preserve institutions by preserving streets. We cannot govern if terrified people are resummoning monsters with every frightened post. I would rather be accused of overreach than watch a hospital fall because we hesitated to unplug a tower. Weiss nods slow. So steelman me. What do you think I get right, General? You are right that trust is a resource, Markov says. You are right that people will act if trusted. Your domestic acts list is not theatre, it is order. You are right that secrecy breeds rumors faster than clarity can chase them. Weiss nods back. Steelman me to you. What do you get right? Threats exploit speed, Weiss says. I will not win a race to publish against a monster that can write in the sky. We cannot process every rumor with perfect accuracy. We will have to shut some channels hard and explain later. We will have to detain dangerous actors without full transparency. We will have to make ugly calls on scarce data. That is what command is. He lets them talk as long as it teaches. He watches faces in the room learn that they are on the same side on a slope. He waits for the moment where the need for decision crystallizes. We do both, he says. We form legal fire breaks with consent. Director Weiss, draft an emergency compact that citizens can accept with one affirmation. It grants you limited authorities tied to goals, not tools. Preserve life, preserve consent, preserve truth. It auto-expires in days, not months, unless renewed by public countersignature. General Markov, you get the teeth you need inside those boundaries. Teeth that bite only where the compact points. Weiss's mouth tightens. A public compact in a panic. Better than a secret state, he replies. It tells the sermon that the city knows what it is willing to trade and what it will not. Markov looks at the map and back at him. And if hesitating to get a signature costs lives, then you sign where you need to and answer for it after, he says. You keep receipts. You cut where the compact implies you may. You do not enjoy it. You report every cut by dawn. Weiss is already typing. We keep dawn as an institution, she says. A daily press at first light. No spin. Numbers, losses, wins. What we tried, what failed. We show our receipts. We show our dead, Markov says, by name. He rests his hand on the table. The paper map warms under his palm. Lines drawn in pencil sharpen as if the paper wants to be brave. A runner reaches the door, breath hard. She is young and has the look of someone who recently chose what she wants to be at 3 a.m. and is now that person forever. Charité reports a drop, she says. Not power, people. Wards are quiet. Patients who were leading keeping phrases fell asleep at the same minute. No distress signs, just off. Farah looks up fast. That's not exhaustion, she says. That's nulling. Weiss's screen blooms without her touching it. A clean grey again, with a single line. Funkturm underground. Signal silence. No trace, no route. Markov draws a circle around the tower on the map. We cut it, she says. We already cut it. This isn't power, Farah says. This is pressure. A bubble of less. He feels it too, like his crown dimming a fractional lumen to spare someone else's eyes. He tastes it. He knows the flavor because he has eaten this kind of dirt before. Blackstone, he says. Noctilith. A crown, or a shard of one. Being used not to shout, but to hush. The room hears the word crown and looks at the top of the Funkturm without meaning to. He sees it without leaving the hall. The coil of steel, the elevators, the basement void where service corridors kiss. He sees agents who are not on any payroll moving equipment in pieces that look like harmless crates. He sees the shape of a lectern made from a rock that hates mines. Weiss is already on her radio. No gun charges, she says. If it is Blackstone, bullets are just noise. We need blanks, we need... She stops. They do not have blanks. They do not have his old tools. You have me, he says. And you have people. He touches the map at the tower with one finger. A mark appears, gold and clear. He touches 2 hospitals, the gate, Museum Island. Marks there too. He is not drawing. He is asking the city to remember its edges. You will hold the circles, he says. I will take a small team and go under the tower. Markov nods. Team composition, she says like a reflex that keeps her safe. Breacher, medic, drone tech, comms. We go light, we go now. He gestures to himself. I will be the breacher. Markov allows the ghost of a smile to exist for half a heartbeat. Understood, she says. You are also point, rear, and armor. Weiss takes the insulted look off her face and replaces it with the one she wears to budget hearings. We don't know how deep it is, she says. I do not need to know before we begin, he replies. We will know before stepping. He turns his head slightly, and the city serves him a picture of stairs, corridors, and the knot of silence growing. He sees how the silence will intersect with his choir. He sees where it will bite first. The siren in his bones changes pitch. It does not say run. It says think faster. Power scaling. Interlude. Noctilith does not strike him like a sword. It erases the room the sword would swing in. Blackstone simplifies. It turns layered minds into smaller rooms. He draws strength from pattern and from consent. Null fields starve both. This world's networks amplify sermons, but they also amplify silences. A curated hush can spread faster than a shout. The vow he chose, aid without conquest, can be twisted into a trap that forbids him to act where the only exit is coercion. An enemy clever enough can present him with only bad doors and make inaction look like virtue while people die. He lifts his hand, and 2 shapes step forward. A paramedic in a patched jacket with the name K. Mahler over her pocket, and knuckles bruised from lifting people incorrectly before she learned how. A Bundespolizei officer with careful eyes and a wedding ring. He turns unconsciously when he thinks. He nods to each. Their spines get an inch taller. You will see what I cannot, he tells Mahler. The quiet hurts soft bodies first. You will tell me when the air is lying. Mahler swallows and nods. I can do that, she says. I have done that in basements with bad heaters. Officer, he tells the policeman. You will be the voice that people hear that is not mine. It matters. I can do that, the officer says. I've told bad news gently. Weiss hesitates and then adds a fourth. Drone tech, she says. Quiet prop rotors, local network, lens. He's good at making things talk that don't want to. A skinny man with a backpack and a t-shirt that says I void warranties lifts a hand and tries not to look at the gold figure like a tourist. Got it, he says. Descending comm relays, mixed spectrum sniffers, and a little tool I probably shouldn't have. We do not steal, Weiss says without heat. We borrow truth, Len says, then looks at the Emperor and adds quickly, and we return it. He looks at their faces and sees them already in the corridors. He will ask them to run. He sees where they will hesitate and why, and he calculates a path that lets them hesitate once and still live. Markov hands him an earpiece. He turns it in his fingers. It looks fragile, a bug's leg. He places it against the auramite at his ear, and it finds a purchase, almost shy. I will be present in your channels, he says to Weiss. I will not speak unless needed. You will lead the city. We will lead the city, Weiss replies. If you fail under the tower, we still do this. If I fail under the tower, he says, you will likely be dead, but you will die as citizens, not as chattel. Silence ripples, this one chosen by humans. It is the good kind, the kind that anchors. He takes one step and the world accommodates. He does not teleport. He walks, and the path between here and there becomes shorter, not by distance, but by waste removed. Marla, the officer, and Lenz follow and feel like they are on a moving walkway, someone built just for them. The Funkturm service stairs smell like dust and time. The light is the color of old sermons. He descends without making sound. He does not mask himself. He refuses to be one more liar in a place already allergic to truth. The air starts to feel like the inside of a thermos bottle. No drafts, heat without personality. A man in a hard hat steps into the corridor at the bottom and makes the mistake of opening his mouth with a speech that starts authorized personnel only, then stops because the authorized personnel he sees do not fit any form. He blinks, then backs away slowly and chooses to be the kind of brave that leaves the area so better, braver people can do their work. It is a good choice. The hush begins as a pressure behind the eyes. Lenz taps his ear and frowns. Wi-Fi is pretending to be copper, he murmurs. Everything thinks it has a cord. It doesn't. Marla swallows, and the click is loud. Hearing myself over myself, she says. Feels like a fever. The officer shifts his shoulders under his vest. Feels like a church where someone took all the chairs, he says. Ahead, the corridor turns and opens into a maintenance space that has been made into a chapel without asking permission. The lectern at its center is a wedge of black, not polished so much as committed. The black does not reflect. It unreflects. Around it, 6 devices sit on tripods, each one humming in a different not sound. Cables run nowhere and still form a web. 2 men stand at the lectern as if debating. One wears a suit that could sell banks. The other wears a robe that could sell asceticism. Their voices almost touch the air and then refuse to. Their mouths move. What they say is a silence with grammar. He knows the cut the spear made in him. He knows this cut before it is made. Turn back, says the suited man, with lips only. To act here is to coerce. You vowed to refrain. Be good. Restrain yourself, says the robed man. Let them choose to die. It is their right. It proves their freedom. Marla's nails dig into her palm. That's not choice, she says low. That's being pushed. He walks into the room as if it were his. It is not. It is hostile ground. He takes it with courtesy. The choice is yours, he tells the suited man and the robed man. Leave that stone and go. You can keep your tongues. They do not look surprised. They are here to be clever, not shocked. The suited man smiles like a friendly audit. You can save them if you break yourself, he says. You can keep your promise if you let them drown. Show us. Show them. The robed man's eyes are the color of good tea. We offer comfort, he says. An end to pressure. an end to obligation. It is kind. Comfort that stops growth is rot, Marla says, too loud, and then claps a hand over her mouth, afraid. He gestures her quiet, not harsh. He's still listening. He feels the Blackstone the way a migraine feels incoming weather. He notes its cutting angles and how they point, not inward like a crown, but outward like a preacher's finger. He notes the 6 tripods and how their hums cancel network noise and leave only the kind that polite people do not mention in nice rooms. He takes 2 more steps. The suited man frowns a practiced frown. Coercion, he says without sound, and points at the Emperor's feet. You are occupying space someone else could have used to leave. He nearly laughs. It is the closest he has come to anger here. Officer, he says, keeping his eyes on the lectern. Tell the room what you see. An unlicensed religious gathering, the officer says, dry. A prohibited installation. Unauthorized structural modifications. Fire code violations. Also 2 men about to be under arrest for endangering public safety. The robed man's lips shape a smile without reaching his eyes. Law. See how you run to it. See how you chain yourselves to paper. We wrote the paper, Weiss says in the officer's ear. We will keep writing it. He lifts his right hand and does not point it. He opens his palm the way teachers do when they want quiet children to listen. The 6 devices on tripods look at that palm and remember, for just a moment, that they were born from people who meant their tools to help. The devices change pitch. One coughs like a broken dehumidifier and stops. 2 more wheeze and then spin down. The hush in the room shivers. The lectern's edge cuts deeper to compensate and strikes his vow. He feels the attack not as pain, but as an invitation to virtue that is actually smothering. He closes his hand into a fist. No, he tells the invitation. The suited man's mouth says, disappointing. The robed man's mouth says, predictable. Marla steps forward before he can, which is his own victory. She grips the handle of a wheeled oxygen cylinder as if it were a battering ram, and then stops, quivering. Tell me when, she says, and looks at him. Now, he says, and she rams the cylinder into the foot of the nearest tripod. It collapses. The hush drops a half step, and the robed man flinches like someone asked him to pay for a meal he promised was free. Lens is under a different tripod, fingers in its ports. Even the ports are lying, he mutters. You're USB-C. You are a sin. He yanks a cable that doesn't exist, and it comes free in his hand because he believes it should. The tripod dies. The officer steps between the lectern and the men with his body not for cover, but to claim the space with the state. He does not draw his weapon. He draws 2 zip ties like a magician, and speaks in the flat tone of a cop saying the line he has said 100 times and will say 1,000. Hands where I can see them. The suited man and the robed man both smile. They are not here to be arrested. They are here to argue the frame. The Blackstone hums. It writes a clause. To turn this off, you must own the room. To own the room, you must take it. To take it, you must rule. To rule, you must break your vow. He does not step forward into that clause. He steps sideways. He turns and looks at Marla. Will you help me hold this? He asks her. Marla blinks, confused. I'm not. You are, he says gently. She puts her hand on his wrist. It looks absurd. Human fingers on sunmetal. It is not absurd. The hush tries to eat the connection and finds it flavored with the wrong thing. Consent. I do not take this room, he says. We do. The clause fails. The lectern hums petulantly. One last tripod tries to find a new rule and cannot. Lens tips it with one careful foot and catches it before it breaks the floor tiles. The suited man's mouth shapes coward. The robed man's shapes usurper. They are the same word wearing different jackets. He looks at them, not unkindly. Leave, he says. They try to speak a word that is not a word and break their own teeth on it. What comes out is spit. They go. The Blackstone remains. It does not understand leaving. It understands only hunger. He does not destroy it. He cannot. Not neatly, not here. Not without feeding the wrong part of the room. He wraps it instead. He pulls the city's remembered cloth around the wedge. Linen from a restaurant table where a promise was kept. Tarp from a youth shelter that held through a storm. A sheet from a hospital bed where someone died with their hand held. It is not literal cloth. It is the memory of fabric used properly. The wedge finds itself boxed in a wardrobe of uses that make its sharpness seem childish. It does not go silent. It becomes shy. Mahler exhales. Lenz wipes his hands on nothing. The officer radios up. Space secured. 2 male suspects departed. Device contained. Advise. Weiss's voice crackles like a stand that is used to being strong. Advise. Get out of that room, she says. We have motion near the gate. He can feel it too, like a pressure on the circle he tuned. He looks up through 3 ceilings and a field and sees the disk over Brandenburg flex in a way it has not tried since the mirror first arrived. He sees a shadow pass across it like a hand over a lamp. He turns to leave, then stops. He glances back at the lectern. He knows he will see it again. He tells it so, softly, as if speaking to a dangerous patient who does not know he is dangerous. Then he goes. They move up the stairs at a pace that would be a run if the air wanted to cooperate. It does not. It sulks. He ignores it and brings them into the day like a diver surfacing with one breath left and a smile for the watchers. The sky over the gate has a new seam. It is thin and straight and not a natural line for anything that was born rather than engineered. It shifts as if deciding whether to be a door. Markov's voice is calm, which means things are bad. We have a contact at a high altitude performing maneuvers that displease physics, she says. We have the disk trying to bow inward. We have 10,000 people in place acting their rituals, and that seems to be the only thing the disk resents. Weiss adds, and we have messages propagating that pretend to be from you, asking citizens to stop their keeping, so you can work. We are countering. It is a close fight. He looks at the seam and does not see craft. He sees a vector, a tool. A smarter foe enters, not with noise but with a claws. If the circle bends, it will snap. If it snaps, everything inside will be defined by the first voice to speak. He will not let it snap. He will not speak first. He walks to the middle of Tempelhof and stands where he can see both the gate and the hospital windows, where people fell asleep and woke again. He speaks just loudly enough for the microphones that do not belong to any brand to hear. I am not asking you to stop, he says to the city. I am asking you to choose with me. A hush falls that has nothing to do with Blackstone. Coffee cups pause in midair. People glance at each other in kitchens and decide to keep doing exactly what they were doing, but with their spines taller. The seam above the gate widens the width of a man's hand. Light behind it is the wrong color for any sun. A shape is already there, waiting for the door to be big enough. Weiss does not need to say its name. He knows the feel. He knows the hymn braided into its edge. Word bearers, he says, and not a smoke. A figure steps through in plate the color of old dried blood, scrolls singing at his edges, vox scramblers glue to his vowels. He does not spread his arms. He clasps his book as if it were a weapon, and for him it is. The name man is no mere preacher. He is a dark apostle who learned from alphabets burned into flesh. He is the kind who can turn good words into traps and bad words into fetters. He will not be killed by a clever fall or by foam. He has an audience and knows how to keep it while the building burns. He rests his hand 5 millimeters from the seam. He does not touch it. He reads the circle in the air and writes an addendum that leeches strength from the choir practice in 10,000 rooms. He eats with politeness. The seam holds. It is shakier now. It can be heard. He feels the phoenix path he used to arrive tug at him like a leash. It wants fuel. It wants more pain. He could feed it and gain force. He will not. He looks at the city instead, at the people doing their small acts, at the woman refilling a teapot, at the man checking on a neighbor he has never met, at the child who is drawing a circle and coloring inside it carefully. He draws power from those acts because they are offered, not seized. The apostle looks across the space and smiles. It is not warm. It is real. God Emperor, he says, and the hyphen is a knife he thinks he is handing over as a gift. Welcome to a world that still has a choice. Let me help you take it. The seam quivers, eager to be a door. The disc frowns. He does not rush. He does not declaim. He chooses the ground. Berlin, he says softly, and the city leans toward him. Hold. The apostle laughs in a voice that makes the glass in distant windows buzz. They will hold until they are exhausted, he says. Then they will ask you to carry them. And when you do, we will use your hands to teach them that chains feel like love. He steps forward 1 pace and feels the circle's terms like braille under his feet. He can break the door with brute will and pay with a slice of himself. He can argue the door back into a wall and lose time while other cities make worse doors. Or he can use the door and let the duel begin on his terms. He does not like any of those doors. He makes another. He raises his hand and sketches a small arc in the air over Tempelhof. Not a door, not a window, something more domestic. A lintel. He invites the city to think of thresholds where you wipe your feet before entering and where guests take off shoes because they were taught to. The circle of the gate considers being a porch. The seam, affronted, hesitates. The apostle's book flips a page of its own accord, like a cat moving to a warmer patch of sun. He is not making it safe. He is insisting on courtesies that cost the enemy something to break. Even zealots have habits. The seam does not close. It narrows and becomes fastidious. The apostle frowns and recalculates. He adjusts his sermon to account for rugs rolled out and not to be stained. The first clash can wait 1 more breath. It will not wait many. He looks at Markov and Weiss. We hold the porch, he says. We brief. Then we go through their door and make them regret building it. Weiss nods. Markov checks her watch, and then the sky, and then the people. She does not argue the goal. She starts assigning tasks to the living. He feels the wound at his shoulder hum in agreement with the apostle's book. They know each other's names now. He will bleed properly soon. The disc smooths and settles into its fastidious circle like a house-proud matron adjusting a centerpiece. The apostle inclines his head a fraction, as if accepting a hospitality he intends to ruin. He sets his feet and lets the city's small acts rise like breath. He will carry them into the door because they asked him to, not because he claimed them. The quieter siren, the one only he can hear, climbs a step. It means the smarter foe has stopped testing and is now playing. It means there will be no easy way to keep both vow and lives without paying a price that has his name on the bill. He backs his vow with interest. They will speak war in the language of manners for the next 10 minutes. Then they will abandon manners and teach each other lessons that will not leave their bones for years. The door waits, polished and horrible. The city hums, practical and holy. He moves between them as if that is what he was built for. Circles hold at the gate, and Tempelhof hums like a lung. The null at the tower sulks under borrowed cloth. The seam has chosen a mouth and placed a book in it. He briefs in motion, because time is a resource with a faster burn rate than fuel. The apostle's goal is not slaughter, he says, eyes flicking between gate and people at windows. It is consent laundering. He will turn your choirs into proof he owns the choir book. Alpha Legion builds the frames and offers needles. Word bearers thread them with sermons that sound like your own voice. Standard counters fail because they feed the frame, Weiss says, catching his rhythm. Guns make spectacle. Total blackout makes the hush stronger. Pure will invites the vow trap. Our best weapons are boring. Routines, thresholds, witnesses, receipts. Then let me give you a spectacle that is a boring one, he says. A duel in which manners win time. Markov nods. We hold the porch, she says, and send squads to posts that have less to do with shooting and more to do with catching people who will faint when their warranted fear finally gets permission. The apostle waits as if he knows the briefing has its own liturgy. He does not shout. He is confident that when he speaks, he will be heard, because his words arrive covered in the varnish of recognition, and that is the most addictive lacquer on any shelf. He walks toward the gate, over grass that has chosen to do its job, until someone gives it a better reason not to. The circle above the gate adjusts, like a host moving bowls, so guests can sit. The apostle inclines his head to the courtesy. He is wired to prey on civility. We will speak first, the apostle says, voice with extra harmonics that make polite language feel like food. For it is said that the righteous man hears before he answers. You will speak second, he replies, setting the order without raising volume. For it is said that guests wait until offered a chair. The apostle's mouth curves, as if appreciating a hymnal he plans to burn later. He places his book on the seam. The leather accepts the charge like skin taking sunlight. Script coils on the pages like snakes settling. You swear to save without ruling, the apostle says, his cadence the practiced tenderness of someone who has performed this surgery many times. You bind yourself to courtesy while the house burns. You are a father lecturing propriety while the wolves are in the nursery. Let me save them for you. Let me be the throne you refuse. There are 1,000 ways to answer that and lose in all of them. He chooses one that is a path through a maze with his hands in his pockets. Their safety is not a prize, he says quietly. It is a collaboration. I am here to make collaboration possible under fire. I will not take their decision away, because you think panic is proof that they should be relieved of it. The apostle does not blink. He angles his book to catch the light of the seam. The decision to drown is not a decision, he says. We bring air, we bring structure, we bring song that keeps time so frightened hands can work. We give the rule that turns flailing into a swim stroke. You give a metronome tied to your debt, he says. You tell them their breath is rented. The apostle opens the book. It does not have pages anymore. It has invitations, each numbered and stamped with wax that smells like vanished good intentions. He reads one. Invitation 1, he says, as if quoting a document that was signed before either of them existed. The people of Berlin, recognizing their incapacity to be sufficient unto themselves in time of metaphysical peril, invite in love and reason the apostolic protectorate of the true way, word to establish a peaceable and eternal stewardship over their sanctity. A pulse moves through the disk. 10,000 kettle boils hesitate. 100 candles gutter and then decide not to. 1,000 throats that had been saying stay for half an hour in softly stubborn cadence falter to find a new syllable. Weiss watches app counters, sees a drop in the number of people using keep words, and tastes bile. He does not reach for the word keep. He does something worse and better. He makes silence do what he wants. Invitation 0, he says to the city, not to the apostle. We hold our breath together for one count. On the second, we exhale and continue. A breath gathers. It feels like waiting for an orchestra to drop into a downbeat. On the second count, the city exhales and resumes its acts. The line of sharp loss the apostle wanted to turn into a cliff becomes a dip. The apostle's eyes harden behind the vox filters. He turns the page and the page turns itself into a knife. "Let us then speak more plainly," he says, and the politeness thins the way ice does when men in uniforms test it with pikes. He reaches into the seam and pulls out a crozier that is not a crozier. Blackstone coils in the crook. Its staff is wound with little wheels that click with liturgical precision. Each click is an argument won and filed. He has brought a weapon that can cut the idea of consent and bleed it into something that looks like compliance, so well that even the compliant are proud of it. He knows the design. He knows the man who designed it. He takes a step and goes from the porch to the verge where manners still apply, but only because he insists. The crozier moves first. The head is a hook meant to catch vows. It does not aim at throat or heart. It arcs for the place just above his shoulder, where the earlier cut left a scar invisible to any camera. The apostle has done his homework. He is here to make that wound talk. The hook strikes and does not pierce Auramite in any measurable way. It slides through the space 2 inches above the metal where his oath lives. Pain is not the right word. It is correction smuggled in as love. It tells his vow it would be more beautiful if it were practical. And by practical, it means obedient. Gold light throws a spontaneous pattern across the sky and then drops it like a hand flung off a hot stove. He steps back and the ground under his feet thinks about changing gradient and decides to be flat. He feels a filament of the choir snap. Somewhere an old woman stops saying her word and starts humming the wrong tune for 2 seconds before she scowls and gets herself back. He does not answer with a sword. He does not own a sword here. He answers with the tedious tools that make empires last. He picks up the rug and shows the dirt under it. "You hide your price in your promise," he says to the apostle, and his voice is boring on purpose, the way forms are boring and save lives. "Say it." The crozier cuts the air. Blackstone sings its frowning song, pressure on the tympanum with a memory of migraine behind it. The apostle smiles and delivers the line he came to deliver. "Surrender your veto, and I will surrender my coercion," he says. "You refuse to rule. I promise not to own. We meet in the middle and save them." "Say it right," he says, still on the verge, still insisting on courtesy, because he needs courtesy to carry precision. The apostle's book flips a page. It is an ugly page. Its calligraphy is beautiful, and it arranges horror the way a competent chef arranges knives on a board. He reads, not looking at the city, looking only at the gold man as if this is between them and not among a million. "You will not compel," the apostle says, and with those words, he scratches the claws into the circle itself. "Therefore, you will not prevent us from compelling where we compel consent. You will not intervene in parish matters. You will not interfere with the management of souls that ask for our management." He hears it land. It is a perversion of religious liberty in the mouth of someone who builds prisons with hymns. It is tailored. It is meant to braid itself into his vow and make the braid a leash. He could break it by drawing deep from the Astronomicon chorus and paying with pain that will scar more than himself. He could agree to it and preserve his vow only to watch it used to build a cathedral whose nave is a cattle chute. He could dodge and let the circles elsewhere eat cities while his rhetoric scores points. He does not do any of those. He places his hand on the air where a door jamb would be and asks the city for an old favor. "Berlin," he says, "you do not cede your threshold, not to me, not to him. We preserve the right to invite and the right to refuse, individually and collectively, at scale. We record invitations in the open. We do not sign under duress. Farah is listening on a rooftop with her laptop and a radio and tears in one eye from the wind. He's building a norms packet, she says into Weiss's ear. He's externalizing consent into an audit. It's boring. It's so boring. It is perfect. Weiss is already writing a language. It is the kind of language that gets snorted at in good times and slept inside in bad ones. Markov is placing squads where bodies will slam when the next manipulation hits. The Apostle's crozier hooks again, faster. He was not sent to rehearse rites. He was sent to puncture. The hook slips through the place where his vow meets the city's invitation and tries to cross-wire them. It grafts his self-limitation to their fatigue. Every time he refrains, it wants them to quit. He feels it, abhorrent and intellectual, and intimate in the way only philosophy turned into trap can be. He lets it in only as far as he must to learn the edges. He catches it between finger and thumb of his will. He squeezes until it squeals. He will not be able to do that twice. Berlin, the Apostle says, widening his audience. Be proud. You did the first 30 minutes. Heroes do the first 30 minutes. Now professionals take over. Drink water, get rest. Let the grown-ups with books and shoulder scars. He moves first this time. He does not punch. He removes the justification from a paragraph. Grown-ups pay bills, he says. The bill is whose? He points at the book. Show them your account numbers. The book hesitates. The book is not used to being audited in public. Its spine adjusts as if it were a priest straightening his back before a scandal. He is exploiting the word-bearer's pride. They believe their bookkeeping is beautiful. He asks to see it. Beauty wants to be seen. He watches the crozier dip a millimeter as the Apostle's focus shifts to keep too many balls in the air. He steps in, not with a blow, with a move that in any other context would be mistaken for a hug. He closes space. He places his forearm against the book and presses without force. He gives the Apostle the chance to choose to step back. The Apostle does not take it. Pride is a better leash than fear if you are building a religion on theft. The crozier's head rakes his vow again. The wound channel opens wider. The pain is not sharp. It is a careful teacher putting his hand on yours to adjust how you hold a pencil, and the adjustment ruins handwriting that was necessary. For 1,000,000 receipts, he flares gold, not a show. A ward that stops someone in a second-floor window from exhaling the wrong word. It costs. He feels fiber tear. He sees 5 hospitals flicker and then return like stubborn candles in a draft. He smells his own will heat. The Apostle leans and whispers a line into the seam that is meant only for him and the seam and whatever lives on its far side. You love them as a father, he says. Let us let you be one. He sees it. The fastest way to end this is to take the throne they offer and make it his. Wrap the city in his authority and call it safety. Centralize memory and send out instructions in a tone people cannot resist. He sees a year with clean streets and queues and no monsters unless they are yours. He sees a decade where no child goes hungry and no city falls to aura as long as they file the requested form at dawn. He sees an empire that is elegant and efficient and full of people who are the wrong size for their skin. He will not do it. He would rather bleed. He places his palm on the seam as if it were a friend's shoulder and breathes. He speaks the word that hurts him most and keeps him honest. No, he says, not to the Apostle, not to the city, but to the convenience that betrays his vow. No. The crozier takes its payment. It opens the wound properly. It writes a negative clause into his body. Every coercive act from his hand will now double charge the choir. Every compulsion will cost 2 households their breath for a minute unless he finds a way to insulate them. He is not a god. He is a civil servant with a crown. He cannot pay that and pretend it is fine. He bends instead. He lets his glossy authority dim. He closes the part of him that drinks from the Astronomicon chorus and runs on the battery of this world's offered consent. He amputates a limb of himself for now, because he will not allow the apostle to run a bill through his name. Markov sees the gold shade down 2 degrees and understands nothing of the metaphysics and everything of the choice. She swallows and moves 2 squads to pick up the slack. Weiss sees app counters climb slowly after a dip and knows he threw away power to cancel a surcharge on ordinary people. She will make him receipts that prove it mattered, even if he never reads them. Marla, at back topside, with a vacuum-sealed bandage and a resolved jaw, whispers, "Thank you," into no microphone, and keeps talking to patients through the tremor. The apostle smiles. It is small and private and acknowledges an enemy who chose correctly and will be easier to torture because of it. He redoubles pressure. He raises the crozier and swings for the only place left. Name. Berlin, he says in the tone of a father signing a unique permission slip. I christen you sanctuary under word. I place you under the protection of sermons that understand you were born screaming and deserve to finally rest. Every plaque in the museums ticks. Every street name flickers on maps by a pixel. Names are hooks and he knows how to pull on them until they feel like comfort. He steps sideways off the porch. He steps onto the gate itself. He does not float. He does not fly. He steps as if stairs are present that only he can see, because he is climbing the story of the gate, and that story has stairs embedded by hands who carved and lifted and rebuilt after tanks left a memory. He places his palm on the bronze of the quadriga. The horses are cold. They are better than most gods. They remember hands polishing them for parades in regimes this city does not honor anymore. He asks them for their old pride and their newer shame and ties both into a knot. Berlin keeps its own name, he says. No christening without the city's council. The apostle's crozier catches his shoulder again. The hook rides the same wound channel because it is efficient to use existing infrastructure when you are evil and have a budget. He sees stars without looking up. 100 meters away, a child drops a crayon and then picks it up and finishes the circle they were drawing. He must change fault lines, or he will die improving the wrong trench. He looks at the crozier. He looks at the book. He looks at the seam. He says a word he has avoided because he does not trade on it. It is not a prayer. It is a request for witnesses. The bell in the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church rings unstruck. The Adhan from a mosque in Neukölln threads it without cancelling it. A minor key chant rises from a synagogue where an old man had been reading quietly to a boy who asks very good questions. Heart monitors in 1,000 rooms tick twice and then settle into a common rhythm for 4 beats. A baker's timer dings. A nurse hums a lullaby she learned from a grandmother whose God tasted like soup. It is not a miracle that knocks the apostle down. It is a sign, and its cost is that some people will die later, because they decided God will always line drums up for them if they ask. He accepts the cost because signs are for stakes, not shortcuts. The apostle's book pauses to listen, because it is certain it can consume this too later. He uses the pause to step into the seam. He becomes thinner as he enters. He becomes more himself and less useful. The door complains like an old hinge being asked to carry weight. It was never meant to. On the other side, there is a copy of the gate, because the word bearers think symmetry is piety. It is not. It is engineering for feelings. The first blow that truly damages him lands here. It is a sentence spoken in a grammar older than German or Latin. It says, "You are a leader, therefore you are an owner." It looks like praise. It slides into the place in his mind where leadership and ownership often sit near each other, because human monkeys built a lot of hierarchy with blunt tools. It opens that seam like a surgeon's cut. He felt blades. He did not expect this knife. He trembles. He does not drop. He feels a little bit of the city's offered consent leak out through that cut toward the book. That is the damage. A hole between offered and owned. He had been so careful. The hole is small. It is exact. It will become a funnel if he does not patch it. He puts his hand on the wound the way he would put a hand on a bleeding child. He would like to lie down and rest. He will not. The apostle steps through beside him, because he is a predator who wants to be in the same room as blood. "You see the kindness," he says softly. "You see the simplicity. You see the clockwork humming along without you having to feel the cogs. Let us shoulder this for you. Let us make your vow true by building a world where it is never tested." He offers a throne made of anesthesia. He offers a good hospital with no exits. He refuses, not with rhetoric, with a change in posture. He takes his hand off the wound and leaves it open to air. He will not guard it jealously. He will not patch it by walling himself away from collaboration. He will patch it by making the hole useless. "Berlin," he says on both sides of the seam. "I do not own you. You may tell me no." A murmur of no rises in 1,000 kitchens with love in it. 100 arrive in the cadence of romance and 100 in the cadence of teenagers. 1,000 more are whispers said into mirrors by people who are working on it. The word does not hurt him. It hurts the book. The book is not used to know from those it thought were loyal. The apostle snarls, manners gone. He slams the crozier down, and the seam tries to eat half the gate. He lunges with an argument that is a guillotine disguised as a seatbelt. He rips 3 consent filaments out of the air and tries to braid them to his staff. He is slower now because he is smaller without his chorus, because he is bleeding thought, because he is trying to be good. He intercepts 2 filaments. The third whips around his wrist and locks. It hurts like breaking a habit. He cannot yank it off without making it worse. He looks at the apostle and understands that this duel is not winnable quickly without the very shortcuts he has sworn off. He will pay. He will choose where. "Markov," he says into a network that is now only will and wire. "You will own the outer ring without apology for 1 hour. Arts of crowd control, arrests where necessary, jammers up. Weiss, you will publish the compact and ask signatures. Farah, you will seed the norms packet. Mahler, you will stay with the Blackstone and breathe for it, as if it were a volatile patient and you had to keep it from crashing into mania." Weiss answers, voice steady. "Dawn press moves to dusk as well," she says. "We show the receipts when they are hottest. We show our hands with our hands shaking. Markov's confirmation is a single word that tastes like steel. Copy." Farah, absurd and perfect, says, "I'm writing a lullaby," and starts to, fingers moving. Mahler speaks into her sleeve, voice raw. "I'll sit with it." He turns back to the apostle and does something terrible and correct. He squeezes the filament around his wrist and feeds it a word that will make the cut worse for him and better for the city. "Limit," he says, and binds his own compulsion to accounting. Every time he pushes without consent from those it will affect, his body will pay in pain, and the city will collect an audit that measures whether he was right. It is the kind of clause that ruins heroes and preserves citizens. He makes it anyway. It is not a martyrdom. It is a break. The apostle strikes at his throat, outraged that prey changes the rules mid-meal. He catches the crozier one-handed. The Blackstone screams, the seam screeches, the gate groans. He takes the force and bleeds inside without visible blood. He lets the pain pass through him into the place where he keeps the memory of a planet he failed and will never mention here. He should be dead by now if this were a story about a man. It is a story about a city. The city is stubborn. The city is quiet. The city is dishes done and kettles refilled and someone lighting a candle and writing a note. I checked on Frau Huber. She is fine. She says the soup needs salt. He turns his wrist. The crozier cracks, not physically, in its plausible deniability. For a moment it looks like what it is, a theft. The book jerks, ashamed. The apostle hisses. He cannot kill him in front of this door without paying with a debt that will trail him into every kitchen tomorrow. He seizes a lesser victory. He makes the apostle step backward through his own seam without confessing his retreat as defeat. He does it by offering him a courtesy he cannot refuse. After you, said as if both of them are reasonable men leaving a funeral. The apostle snarls and goes, because he is still religious about his role and believes in certain liturgies even when he burns others. The seam narrows to the width of a pencil. He taps it with a finger that shakes and sets it at a size that will not tempt anything too big for now. He steps back out onto the gate. He puts his hand where it was on bronze. He holds on, as if gravity has changed with a bureaucrat's patience. Codex note. The syllogist crozier wounds by converting self-limitation into public license. Resist by externalizing consent into shared audit and binding compulsion to post hoc pain accounting. He descends the invisible stairs without showing the effort to those who need his back to be a wall right now. His knees exist again when he reaches the grass. He does not let anyone see the way his breath is shorter or how the light in his crown no longer fills the cracks. It outlines them. Vice is there, face pale, phone in hand, compact published. You made your pain a ledger, she says, disgusted and impressed in equal measure. We will not let this be weaponized against you. You already did, he says gently. The cost was always here. Now it is counted, not hidden. Markov steps up and does not salute. She does not know how to salute this and understands that salutes are for public, not private. We held, she says. There were pushes. We held. We will hold for an hour under my name. Then hand the knife back and ask the city to watch us. He nods. Good. Marla's voice comes through from the tower, fingers on Blackstone that is shy and sulking. It wants to get louder, she says. I'm telling it to wait until it has a reason. Tell it will have witnesses, he says. Farah's lullaby, sung by strangers into rooms, starts to spread. It is not the same song anywhere. It shares bones, a cadence that dips at the second bar and rises at the fourth. A word for keeping that can be pronounced in any mouth without shame. It is not a spell. It is better, a practice. The disc over the gate tightens into a coin. The seam holds small. The apostle has not left. He has reframed. The Alpha Legion have likely refit their craft with the data they came to harvest. He has been truly hurt. The wound is an ideological perforation more dangerous than any gash. He is less now by choice, and the enemy knows it. He looks not at the sky, but at his own hand. It shakes when he commands anything larger than a door. He will have to refuse many invitations to be effective. He will have to accept judgment. We are not done, he says to Markov and Weiss, but we cannot advance with limits unclear. I must seek sanction. Weiss passes that word like it is a grenade with both safety and detonation uses. From whom, she asks. Not petulant, invested. From the authority that makes my vow part of a law, not a preference, he says. I will not let a preacher tell me what my oath means. I will ask the throne. He feels it, far and near. the slow pulse of machinery that is a prayer anyone can hear if they know how. The choir he turned down that still hums because it loves him even when he does not sip. He feels the quiet where blanks once stood near him in another life. The human-shaped silences that keep saints honest. You'll leave, Markov says. It is not an accusation. It is a logistics fact with grief attached to it like a sticky note. I will go and return, he says. I will take an escort. I will not face it alone. It is not a court. It is a measure. It will tell me what rules I can bind to this place, so my refusal to rule does not become complicity in murder. Weiss is already drafting in her head. A small team, people who are both witnesses and brakes, people who owe this city more than they owe any god. We'll choose, she says. You will accept our choices. Yes, he says. Markov touches her earpiece. Her eyes track two places at once, Lagos and London. They're calling us, she says, voice flat. The way soldiers talk to keep their voices from telling truths their bodies cannot yet accept. Everyone is calling us. Tell them we are building porches, he says. Tell them to find their own thresholds and wipe their feet. He takes 3 breaths. He takes 1 step and stands at Tempelhof's axis again. He looks toward a place that is not in this world and is in all of them, because it is made of duty and machine and prayer and the pain of a man on a chair who never dies and keeps the night out by being worse than it would be otherwise. He reaches with the Phoenix step and asks the Astronomicons chorus for leave, not power. A line opens, not a wound, a seam hemmed with nails of Blackstone and gold. It tastes like home and regret and bureaucracy and war. It is beautiful to people who like pipes, because pipes carry heat if you bleed for them. He will go. He will return. He will be weighed. He will bring back rules that hurt him and save them. He will visit the place where his vow was born, as control and is becoming service. He will ask for terms. He will insist on mercy clauses. He will argue with himself in front of a bowl of light that is a man and a machine and a promise. He gestures, and 2 people step into the place where he is looking, because they were already moving toward it before he knew he needed them. Markov and Weiss stand on either side of the seam. They do not touch it. They do not bow. They speak into radios because radios are real, and the seam is also real, and Berlin needs both kinds of reality to stand. Berlin, Weiss says on every channel, and in cafes and on trams and in hospital corridors, people turn because the city is talking with their own voice. We will keep doing boring things. We will keep receipts. We will allow ourselves to be scared. We will not consent to be owned. Our guest is going to ask someone very old for permission to help. While he's gone, we are in charge. Keep your kettles off if you don't need them. Water your plants. Text your neighbor if you have one. If you don't have one, make one. It is not poetry. It is a spine. It stiffens backs without shouting. He nods once to both of them. He turns to the seam and feels the crozier's damage throb, as if someone is tapping his bone with a spoon. He does not make a face. He steps into the place between words and jurisdictions. The city does not clap. It does not cheer. It continues. That is the highest honor any place can pay a man leaving to get permission to help it. He is not alone in the seam. Something waits with courtesy that is terrifying because monsters are never courteous, unless the stakes are high enough to make theatre more useful than claws. A figure steps out from the hatch in air 5 meters ahead. He is the same height. He wears a crown that is a lattice of Noctilith tuned to a note. Only certain throats can sing. His armor is a poem written by an accountant. His face is his face, if he had allowed different men to name him. His voice is his voice, with the grace filed off. Father, says the Mirafoe, with love sharpened to a point. Let me show you the optimization of your flaw. He stops. He measures. He does not reach for a sword. He reaches for the discipline that made him build purges and then regret them. This will not be won with that. It will be won with someone else's hands on his arm at the right second, and with a bell and a lullaby and a compact and a cup of tea on a windowsill where someone texts the neighbor. The seam smells like hot metal and old winter air. The gate is behind him, immaculate in its own survival. The porch holds. The disc turns its face away like a child sulking when adults choose slow conversation over fast pain. He takes another step into a corridor that is also a nave, and the quiet footfalls behind him tell him his escort chose themselves and are not afraid to choose again. He wears his wound like a borrowed coat. He will keep it visible. He will ask to be judged with it on, not hidden. He will refuse a throne he could take and will ask for a mandate that will cost him friends and ease. He will return with rules cut into his palms and hand them to people who will make them better. He is smaller in the seam. He is more himself. He keeps walking. The seam runs like a nave without a roof, edges stitched with faint constellations that are really equations. Footfalls echo as if listened to by patient stone. He moves at the front because the path likes a leader, but he keeps his pace human so the people behind can keep up without being turned into tokens. Markov walks on his right, visor up, breathing like a metronome. Weiss walks on his left, hands empty, eyes reading ghost briefs only she can see. Mahler is a step back with a medic's bag and a stubborn jaw. The officer, Richter, he finally hears, Jonas Richter, keeps rear watch where rear is a negotiation. Lens pads between them, backpack murmuring to itself. Little relays shedding chalk lines of friendly signal as they go. They pass a chapel without walls. It is a widening in the seam where hexagram plates inlaid into nothing make the air sit up straighter. Candles that are not fire burn with steady attention. A sister of silence stands in the middle like a ship's figurehead carved from soundlessness. Her mouth does not move. Her presence makes the pain in his shoulder simpler, like a sum done on paper instead of carved into bone. Mahler looks at the sister with startled gratitude. It's quieter, she murmurs, then corrects herself. Not silent, honest. The sister's eyes touch his for a moment. In that glance is a whole debate about whether humility is a weapon or a shield, and who gets to carry it. He inclines his head. She answers with an almost imperceptible tilt that could be greeting or judgment. A Medicae Deus waits off to one side, its instruments older than this world's oldest hospitals, and maintained with the kind of love that does not over-polish. He sits without being asked. Mahler steps in with gloved hands and no superstition. Your wound is a rule, not a cut, she says, swabbing along auramite that warms to her touch. I can dress a rule. You will bruise if you contradict it, Weiss says dry. But dress it anyway. Mahler secures a strip that looks like bandage and behaves like a promise, permeable to truth, impermeable to guilt. The ache eases one notch and finds a new frequency. A custodian stands at the dais edge, gold like a standard, presence like a law. He does not introduce himself because names matter differently here. He looks at the humans the way keepers look at tools they have stopped calling tools and started calling colleagues. You pay in increments, he says, not accusing, assessing. Cost without doctrine becomes drift. Doctrine without cost becomes theatre. Then teach, Weiss says, glancing up at him like a cat daring a statue to blink. Tell us where you would have him bleed and why. Not on thresholds, the custodian replies. In rooms, in councils, in receipts. He should bleed where men can see and choose to share the wound or close the door. Markov snorts softly. We are already doing that. Then you are already doing it right, the custodian says. And the compliment feels like the inspection stamp on a bridge beam, impersonal and approving. The sister raises one hand, palm out. It feels like permission and warning. He stands. The chapel narrows into corridor again. The seam changes timbre, the way a winter road sounds under a different set of tires. Something is ahead that respects geometry and plans to use it as a knife. He hears the crown before he sees it. Noctilith sings to itself in a scale that is almost ecclesiarchal, then refuses to resolve. The man who wears it steps out of a side hatch in air and inclines his head with the grace of someone who has practiced, until courtesy is a battlefield maneuver. Prefect Luthvir, the Mirafo says, offering a name the way officers offer water to equals. Auditor of null, optimization of your floor. He is his height. His armor is a budget rendered as art. The crown is a lattice of black that drinks the light and returns ledger lines, where his own crown carries consent like a conductor's baton. The prefect's carries silence like a lock-picking kit. Richter's hand flexes toward a pistol and stops because the pistol would be against the wrong opponent. Mahler's breath goes quiet. Lenz's backpack hum drops, and a small relay fizzles, as if embarrassed to be alive in such company. You file dogma into a tool, the prefect says, voice his cadence with the edges sharpened. You chose aid over rule. You also chose latency. You get human-in-loop failures. You get panic. I get throughput. I get guarantees. I do not need choirs. I need quiet. Y steps partway forward, then stops because this is not her debate, and she is wise enough to know it and brave enough to hate it. Markov sets her boots as if to brace a doorway. He does not meet the prefect in the center. He steps to one side so that passage remains possible for those behind. The Mirafo marks the courtesy with a nod that doubles as an angle of attack update. Berlin signed a compact, the prefect says, as if reading off his slate. It gives temporary sovereignty to their own leaders and asks for dawn receipts. Efficient, moral, slow. Your wound is a rate limit I would remove. Step aside. Let me deprecate consent and deploy custody. I will meet your outcomes with fewer funerals. You will meet my outcomes with fewer citizens, he says. Custody that cannot be revoked is conquest. Make revocation conditional on competence, the prefect replies mildly. Replace plebiscite with performance. The sun rises, we count breath. If breath is up and panic is down, consent is deemed implicit. Renewal by silence. Null for the common good. Richter's jaw jumps. You're redefining no as good behavior, he says. That's a trick. Tricks are for children, the prefect says. Eyes on the emperor. This is governance with adult math. The crown's hum thickens. The seam's plates flicker. Distant beacons muffled by velvet. He feels the pull of a fight inside the fight. Not blows, but architectures competing. The prefect unfurls a geometry like a net. Hexagons of hush tessellated into policy. It wants to fall over this corridor and nest. He unrolls something smaller, duller, more stubborn. A ledger book with coffee rings, a schedule taped to a fridge, a list of names under a heading that reads volunteers. He pushes it with the heel of his hand. It is not elegant. It sticks. The prefect lifts one palm. Noctilith spokes a line. The corridor's lights dim, not to darkness, but to plausible deniability. The sister behind them becomes almost unbearable to look at. Her silence is asked to do too much. Look at your escort, the prefect says softly. They are brave. They are unscalable. Scale is not a virtue when applied to persons, he says. Scale is mercy, the prefect counters. One pattern, one law, zero variance. We stop rehearsing the war every morning and go to work. The first blow is not a blow. The prefect leans and lays a palm perfectly on his vow. The contact is gentle, proprietary, devastating. Pain scores him, not like fire, like an audit correcting a line item in red. Consent is a column. Compulsion is a column. He feels a hand move numbers across without permission. He does not pull away. He lets the correction write and then writes under it. Disputed. Pending review. Witnesses present. The ledger resists being a one-man book. Weiss reads the line in her peripheral and inhales. She is the kind of soul that loves a margin note. Your receipts will be your ruin, the prefect says, mild. I will feed them to your enemies and call it transparency. You will try, he says. They will also be my salvation. The second blow is aesthetic. The prefect tilts his head and runs a null wave across the corridor, calibrated to uncharmed choirs. It makes singing feel childish. It makes routine feel small. It makes kettles heroic to the point of satire. It is weaponized embarrassment. Marla flinches. The lullaby in her ear sounds thin. Lenz's relays dim. Richter's earpiece whispers a weird, familiar shame. Don't be earnest. He feels his city blush as if caught in an unguarded act of goodness. He answers by being embarrassing. He lifts his hand and traces a cross that is also a checkmark. A Magen David that is also a junction. A crescent that is also a sickle to harvest grain. He prays a prayer from a child's book and a maintenance schedule. He says aloud, turn off lights you're not using. And the seam accepts the liturgy. The shame rebounds into pride, small and solid. The prefect's eyes narrow a fraction. Courtesy remains. He is near his own sign, the null-crown's comfort zone. If this were to end here, it would end in a gentle suffocation, dressed as order. A bell rings that is not here. It is not the Berlin bell. It is a deeper, older metal, moving in air that is not air. It is the palace calling itself to the window. The seam stiffens like a spine told to straighten by a parent it cannot disobey. A figure steps out of nothing that is really law. He's gold in the way cliffs are gold at evening. He carries a guardian spear that is a key. His helm's plumes scribe a verdict in dust that is not dust. Prefect, the custodian says, tone that of a doorkeeper who has found two boys brawling on the cathedral steps. Withdraw. Optimization requires tests, the prefect replies. Perfect blandness. I am a friendly test. You are a theft with manners, the custodian replies. Withdraw. The crown brightens, black light tugging at edges. The sister's hand rises half an inch. The custodian does not shift his weight. The seam's plates glow with the pattern of a hexagram taken from a page Malcador wrote and never showed anyone outside the room. He does not draw attention. He waits to see whether the sign suffices. It does, because the prefect was never here to die. He was here to message discipline. He bows as if leaving a salon. He leaves one sentence behind, not as threat, as memo. When you tire of receipts, the prefect says, I will still be here. Then he unthreads himself from the corridor and is gone. The custodian looks at him and the escort. Reach the throne, he says. It sounds like a benediction and an order and a weariness. They move. The seam resolves into architecture that has been told what to be for 10,000 years and likes it. Walls appear. Halls accept their width. The smell shifts to oil that has been prayed over and ozone that has learned to keep itself clean. They cross a chasm on a bridge that is also a calendar. Each step lights a year. Markov's boot falls on a year that was bad and holds anyway. Weiss glances down and reads a date that never existed in her world and recognizes it as the day an empire ended and saved itself by writing a different kind of rule. They come out into a court. That is a planet. The sky is stone. The floor is a map of oaths. The palace rises like a continent of intent, its silhouette a line drawn by a hand that was taught geometry by necessity. Towers crown the horizon like saints and antennae. The air carries a low hum that is not mechanical, it is clerical. Ledger pages turning in a wind that never tires. Golden guards line an approach whose length is not about distance, it is about decorum. Their armor reflects the humans in ways that flatter without lying. Their poses are not at attention. They are in that place between readiness and amity where true professionals live. Blanks move like shadows that the light approves. Sisters of silence take positions at quarters and stations marked on the floor by plates that remember their weight. Their proximity simplifies everything. The crozier's ache drops to an honest sore. The vow sits down with a cup of water and breathes. A procession forms that starts as a column and resolves into a spiral, as if the palace is a snail shell built around a memory that must be protected. Archmagos officiants whisper to machines with hands like prayer wheels. Skitarii stand at ease and look like cautionary statues. Scribes in robes that have known ink and blood stand with slates that have also known both. They pass a medici alcove where a chirurgeon in gold-trimmed bone cloth offers a tray without looking up. Marla takes one ampoule and shakes her head at the rest. "He is not mine to drug," she says, and the chirurgeon nods as if a correct answer was given. A chapel reveals itself where no space for it existed, a niche with a bowl of light that looks like water and burns like law. Weiss pauses because the bowl remembers every petition ever made to it, and her heart stutters at the resonance. She does not kneel. She stands and writes silently in her head, then offers those sentences to the air with the humility of a novelist who knows her draft is not the only draft. They arrive at a hall that is not a hall but a decision. Its roof is absent by definition. The walls are a ring of plates inscribed with hexagrams, circles, triangles, each a judgment rendered in geometry because words get tired. At the far end sits the numinous bowl of light. It is not a throne. It is the thing the throne was built to carry. In it is a man and a machine and a promise and a pain and a policy. He does not stop short. He walks to the place where people stand when they want to be seen and weighed. He does not bow because the bowl is him and not him. He understands that bowing would be theatre. He understands that refusing would also be theatre. He stands. The light reaches without moving and counts his ledgers. It tastes the fresh claws he bound to his compulsion. It reads his shoulders cut and recognizes the ink. It sees Berlin's compact and the Dawn press idea and the lullaby's chord. It sees the crozier's negative and the prefect's memo. It sees the sister's raised palm and Marla's bandage and Weiss's neutral face and Markov's boots. 100 witnesses take their places. Shield captains in gold. A sister captain whose presence is a stone laid over a grave where something dangerous is buried. An inquisitor in plain cloak whose quills are arranged like talons and whose eyes are exhausted by love. A governor who learned to sleep on floors in sieges because chairs break first. An archmagos with fingers like rosaries and a voice like a voltmeter. No one speaks with mouth. The room is telepathic and numinous because speaking here is not efficient, and efficiency here is a mercy for the living. They show him what war looks like when you're not allowed to lie about it. A spreadsheet that bleeds, a hymn with missing notes, a room where 2 children sleep under a table while someone writes a new ration log by candle, a battlefield where 3 decisions were made and none were clean and 1 saved more. He shows them a blue world that was surprised by a mouth in the sky, and how a porch saved breath, and how a compact made obedience moral for an hour. without making it to habit. He shows the crozier's trick, and the way a father will be tempted to own what he is only borrowing. They ask him if he still wants to refuse a throne. He answers by opening the wound to their view and leaving his hands at his sides. He does not defend himself. He does not accuse the apostle. He shows cause and effect and leaves room for judgment. Markov is allowed one thought across the aisle. He will keep paying, she thinks at the bowl, not as argument, as receipt. If you allow it, he will keep paying until he is useful, and then until he is not. Our job is to keep him useful and never let him be only that. Weiss is allowed one thought. She sends a spreadsheet. It is not tidy. It is honest. It lists traded liberties and their durations and their reasons and their receipts. It asks for a clause that forbids convenience. It asks for an override that costs enough to be feared and has to be asked in a room like this, not in the field. Marla is allowed one thought. It is a memory of a hand held in a dark ward and a woman who died right, but would have lived if the state had been better a year earlier. It is a plea for policy that prevents harrowing heroics. Richter is allowed one thought. It is a simple sentence without rhetoric. Tell us when to say no. He sends it like a duty reporter asking whether the shift is over. Lenz is allowed one thought. It is a schematic with the caption, "We can't patch faster than they can pivot if we are alone." It asks for bridges between choirs. The bowl of light is not a person spliced to a device. It is a promise under stress. It answers with rules in the form of burdens he will carry and burdens they must carry. They will speak the formal version in the next hall, with words that can become policy. Here it is an exchange of weights. He is told which things he may compel without paying households, the cessation of slaughter in a perimeter, the shutting of a door that would eat a city, the removal of a crozier from a child's hand. He is told which things will always cost him double and triple, the renaming of a neighborhood, the seizing of a broadcast, the attention of a voice for its content. He is told he may patch thresholds, but not rewrite rooms. They are told which things they must do if they want him to be allowed to keep his vow. Write compacts that expire weekly, publish receipts that shame, keep dawn as habit, train thousands of small auditors in kitchens and precincts to say no even when afraid. A sister's hand hovers over a plate. The hum of the bowl hits a different note, like an organ's fifth added to the chord. The rule is accepted in a place where rules become part of the building. He does not breathe easier. He breathes correctly. A custodian steps from the ring, his spear a diagram. He gestures them aside to a medica chapel that looks like a barracks for weary saints. He indicates a bed. He does not insist. Marla looks at him. He shakes his head once, and she respects pride and reads pulse anyway with fingers that pay attention. In a balcony above, the Inquisitor with the plain cloak, Severine Holt, by the smell of restrained fire, makes a mark on a slate. She is summarizing argument debt for later. She is a dangerous kindness. The Archmagos shifts in a rustle like a book opened to a page with a burn. He projects a small model of a crown tuned to null. The sister's auras make it wilt. Noctilith optimization, he clicks. Portable quiet. Concern. Mimetic integration. Proposal. Civic countervectors integrated into municipal infrastructure. Non-lethal, non-coercive, non-proprietary. Weiss's mouth twitches. Open source sanctity, she thinks, and the phrase lands on a plate somewhere like a little joke that will become a standard. They move from the hall to a smaller chamber where words must be spoken, because words are how governments bind themselves. The bowl of light is less present here. Its deputies are more prominent. A seneschal whose face is a ledger reads in a tone that makes murder sound like a line item, and then makes mercy feel like policy. The mandate he will bring back is read once to ears, once to bone. Even Markov flinches at the clause that says he must publish his harm within 1 hour of doing it. Even Weiss breathes easier at the clause that says any citizen may withdraw consent to be used as choir on any day for no reason and must be honoured. Power scaling. Interlude. Under sanction, he may compel only at thresholds and only to prevent non-consensual harm within an active perimeter. Compulsion beyond that bleeds him and triggers automatic audit broadcasts. His power scales with choirs that volunteer. It decays rapidly when null infrastructures sit in civic bone, demanding physical removal or patient wrapping. Sacred signs cannot be reused. Each sign costs future belief and must be justified with receipts. He cannot insulate his vow from ledgers. Every emergency override ties to a public timer that expires unless renewed by signatures he does not control. They take him to a gallery that shows portraits of failure and calls them education. He looks at men and women who chose thrones, and those who chose compacts, and those who chose to walk away. He looks longest at a painting that is only a city street with morning trash and a woman opening a shop. He understands that survival looks like that more than it looks like gold. The custodian beside him, the same from the chapel, speaks low enough that only he hears. "We built an empire on obedience," he says. "We hold a species together with fear and love in equal parts because the night is real. You have chosen a tool we do not use often. Do not make us regret lending it. I will make you proud and angry," he replies. Both are uses. The custodian almost smiles. It is like a mountain thinking about rain. "Good," he says. They are led past drill floors where men who do not need practice anyway. Blanks walk through the lines and make perfection less important than honest form. A choir sings a line with no words and makes the hair on Richter's arms rise. He hears the cadence and thinks about writing to his husband to say he is fine, and then does, because the rules here are contagious. One more chapel, smaller. The bowl of light is not here. Instead, a string of little lamps that look like kitchen knights. People have scratched names into the edge of the platform with knives and with fingernails and with tools borrowed from engineers. Marla touches a name that is a stranger and says softly, "Okay," as if agreeing to keep it safe. In a side alcove, a sister shows Weiss a slate with a scrawl. In a hand, Weiss recognizes as her own, from another day she has not lived. The slate reads, "Publish even when it hurts." Weiss does not ask how the slate knows her. She nods. The sister nods back in a way that is both absolution and assignment. They return to the first hall. The bowl's light has shifted a tint. It is not approval. It is readiness. A thin line of pain runs from his shoulder down his arm into his palm and pools where a brand would be if this were about ownership. It is not. It is about limits he accepted and the right to act inside them. He looks at the city far away and near, at Berlin's porch and London's ring and Cairo's song. He looks at Lagos, Sao Paulo, Manila, Melbourne. He looks at the child still drawing a circle whose crayon has become a nub, and at the neighbor text that says soup, and at a nun who stopped humming and started counting, because the counting helps. The custodian lifts his spear half an inch. The sign is a benediction with a stop at the end of it. He nods once, accepting. The return path opens. It is narrower by design. He should be tired. He is. He does not let tired be the story. He lets mandate be the story. On the way back, the prefect is absent in person, but present as discipline. The seam has fewer places for bravura. It has a place where an apology would fit, and he says one there under his breath for the time he used too much light at the gate. The corridor approves. Marla brushes his sleeve. Her eyes are wet and furious because the mandate says Ambulances will skip some calls to keep circles intact, and she hates being told whom to let die today. We'll publish the why, he says. She nods once, and that once is a contract. Weiss walks one pace ahead and is already writing the first dusk press in her mind. Numbers, receipts, failures, wins, clauses exercised, clauses declined. She is not a saint. She is an administrator with a spine. The room they just left loves administrators with spines. Markov rehearses the handover in 3 hours when her hour ends. She will look tired on camera because she is. She will ask the city to watch the knife in her hand and tell her when she cuts wrong. She will promise nothing she cannot deliver. She will be believed enough to make the next hour possible. Richter checks his weapon. He will not fire at ideas. He rereads the clause that tells him when to say no and nods to himself. He will practice saying it to superior officers and to himself. It will get him in trouble. It will keep someone alive. Lenz walks and writes a spec for civic countervectors on streetlights, on routers, in belfries, in the bottoms of pots. He will share it and forget to put his name on it, and someone else will, and he will not mind. And the spec will save a block in Jakarta and a village in Sindh and a tower in Leeds. The Seams Chapel appears again. The sister has not moved, and yet the angle of her hand has changed by a degree that means blessing if you have learned their language. He inclines his head again, and in that tiny ritual, he stores a reserve of courage to spend on the next porch. They step out over Tempelhof, Berlin sky, the disc at the gate, the coin over the seam, the lullaby like water. The mandate settles like a new armor that is also a hair shirt. He breathes in, breathes out. He does not announce it. He shows it by walking. A drone drops to hover at his shoulder for a heartbeat and then is gone. It uploaded a clause to the local network. Emergency compulsion exercised at 14:09 to close a seam. Pain cost discharged. Receipts published. Appeal window opens at 18 o'clock. No one told the drone to do that. It is a reflex the city grew while he was gone. He smiles very slightly and then stops smiling because the apostle stands within the circle and the book in his hands smells like a library burned on purpose to make a point. The crozier gleams, furious and hungry. He nods to the city. He nods to the knife in his own hand he will not use unless he has to. He nods to the porch. He nods to the bowl hundreds of light years and a hair's breadth away. He sets his feet on grass that is steadfast and imperfect. He lifts his head. He speaks with a voice tuned by mandate and bruised by love. "We continue," he says, and the work answers. The apostle waits inside the circle as if leaning on a neighbor's fence. The crozier looks modest. Its head is a hook that has learned everyone's first name. He keeps the book shut as if that were humility and not a coyness, honed into a tool. He walks to meet him because the porch must be used or it rots into gesture. The grass underfoot has learned stubbornness overnight. The air tastes like clean kettles and a bell that refuses to be ashamed of ringing. "Berlin," he says, voice even. "You will hear choices." The apostle lifts the crozier as if raising a hand for permission to speak. He inclines his head to the gesture and waits. Courtesy buys time. Time is breath. "You returned with the rules," the apostle says, voice sweet and tired at once. "You chose the smallest cage and call it a crown. When you tire, we will feed you sleep." He does not answer yet. He looks beyond the apostle at the seam, which is fastidious and faintly offended at dirt tracked toward it. He looks at the crowd whose rhythm he can hear and not command. He looks at Markov's posture, which is resolution minus glamour. He looks at Weiss's jaw, which is said to publish. There steps sideways. He stands in the same place and is also elsewhere. A plane where wind makes a chord. The bowl of light is not present, but the rules it carried are. A figure approaches that is him if he were a rumor carved into a statue. The version that says yes to the easiest mercy. 3 doors appear without walls to hold them. They are not images. They are prices tagged in clear handwriting. The first door is carved with laurel and a star field. Return. He sees himself step back into the web he took to arrive. Burn the route shut behind him and spare this blue world his enemies' hunger by removing the lure. He watches the next week fill with smaller auroras and fewer mouths. He watches memories of him fade by polite degrees into a photograph in an article about mass hysteria, professionally debunked. He watches Berlin's porch crumble into a sweet story people tell at dinner to feel safe. He watches Lagos sing alone, and London bargain, and Cairo cut its hair to stop a fever. He watches 100,000 fewer deaths now, and 1 million more later because practice is stolen, and the next storm is bigger, and there is no muscle memory to lift in time. He tastes rest like warm bread. It is delicious and poisonous. The second door is blank wood, with a handle anyone can grasp. Free agent. He sees himself step off every map and onto all of them. An answer that arrives where lanterns go out. He becomes a rumor with a ledger. The saint of thresholds who answers to no committee. He saves lives with the strength of outstretched hands and ruins governments with the shadow of his back. He watches compacts wither. Because why write law when the goal man will show up and make the hard call? He watches the apostle smile, because a city with faith in saviors is a city with room for new gods. He watches Alpha Legion adjust 5 sermons into a single narrative. Reliance. He feels the thrill of speed. He feels the rot of schism. He sees 3 quiet civil wars in 10 years with his name used as a justification by both sides. He tastes freedom like knife metal between teeth. It is strong and wrong. The third door is work, sanctioned servant. It shows days like this stretched into a long, thin rope, porches and ledgers and insistences. It shows a crown that dims on purpose. It shows receipts printed while hands shake. It shows evenings where people hate him for telling them no, and mornings where others bring coffee because someone has to keep no honest. It shows the prefect's memo waiting like a nail on a step, and the apostle's crozier looking for throats, and his own wound insisting on audits when moving fast would be easier. It shows fewer parades and more funerals with names pronounced correctly. It shows a world that learns and argues with him and throws him out of rooms and then invites him back. It shows a symbol that is not a throne and not a halo, but a lintel over a door and a ledger on a table. It tastes like salt. It is plain. It is right. He does not walk to any door. The doors walk to him and ask to be carried. He sets down the first. He shakes his head at the second. He opens his hand to the third. The vision folds, polite as closing a notebook. The porch returns. The apostle has not moved except his eyes. He knows when prey decides to be something else. We should make this brief, the apostle says, kindness sharpened. Long suffering becomes theatre. I agree, he says. 3 paths. I refuse 2. I accept 1. Always the administrator, the apostle says, amused. Very well. Let me administrate your soul. The crozier jerks for his throat with the easy grace of corruption disguised as help. He does not block. He steps into the blow and sets the hook at the only place he is permitted to compel by mandate, the threshold. His left hand lands on the invisible lintel with enough weight to register on every ledger built into the air. The circle chimes as if a doorbell were run from the city story. He is allowed to shut a door to stop non-consensual harm inside an active perimeter. The claws bite. It hurts. It does not overcharge the choir. Pain bores into his palm like a dowel hammered through bone. He pushes anyway. The crozier's hook meets a law it cannot praise its way around. The seam refuses to widen. The porch refuses to be a nave. The circle holds its width. The door stays a door. The apostle does not show anger. He shows admiration. It is worse. You found something small you are allowed to own, he says. You confuse that with victory. I found something small I am allowed to serve, he says. I am required to report the bruise for it within the hour. Watch. On the drone network and the municipal feed, and the radio taped to a lamp in a stairwell where a pensioner sits with a cat, a line appears. Threshold compulsion exercised at 15:01 to prevent non-consensual harm. Cost, high. Audit opens 18 o'clock. Submissions welcome. The city reads it without halting. The city nods. The city grows a new reflex, to look for receipts when power claims virtue. The apostle plants the crozier and opens the book where it smells like childhood kitchens and the good blankets of a sick day. Come home, he says to Berlin. You deserve it. 100 voices answer with a practiced no. It is not contemptuous. It is gentle and final. A grandmother shakes her head while knitting and says, "No, dear," to the air. The word threads through the circle like a skein of common sense. He has to end the crozier, or it will spend the day finding new angles on the same wound. He's not allowed to kill its owner as a shortcut. He is allowed to disarm when a weapon is being used to compel without consent inside the active perimeter. He is allowed to do it once if he publishes the why and accepts the pain. He looks at the crozier. He looks at the book. He looks at the child on the edge of the crowd tapping a circle closed with the blunt end of a crayon. He looks at Mahler sitting with the shy stone and breathing as if the stone's feelings matter. He looks at Richter watching for the moment when his voice, not the goldman's, must stop a bad act in a small room. He reaches with his right hand, the bandaged one, the one Mahler dressed with a promise. He closes his fingers around the crozier's neck just below the hook. He will not break it. He will remove it from this threshold. The pain is not theatrical. It is a ledger updating in real time under a pen that never runs out of ink. He feels the claws he bound to himself clamp down. Compulsion beyond threshold authority bleeds you double and triggers audit now. He pays. The circle hears the cost and sings one resolving note to remind him he is not dying alone. He takes the crozier away like removing a knife from a family table. He sets it under the porch, inside the circle, outside the seam, where it is neither altar nor tool. He wraps it in the same remembered cloth that made the shy stone embarrassed, a tablecloth that covered debts, a blanket that warmed a fever, a towel that dried a child after a cold swim. The crozier, deprived of an audience and a throat to catch, sulks. Its black appetite dims. It is not safe. It is contained. The apostle lunges with the book, and he steps into the book's spine and holds it closed with a palm, not coercing a word, restraining a weapon. The book whispers promises it copied from love. He answers with boredom made holy. He recites the rights of a city aloud in a voice suited to committee rooms and hospital corridors. He recites the time the curfew starts and the number of the hotline. He recites the clause that lets any person withdraw from the choir. He recites until the book understands that he can do this all day and that no one will later call him romantic for it. The apostle steps back and does something he hates, recalculates. He looks at the seam and sees doors closing ugly in other cities because they lacked practice. He looks at the prefect's absence and understands that 2 scripts are running, and the one with manners is losing in Lagos, and the one with nil returns is winning in London. He opens his mouth to pivot, and finds his rhetoric coated in Berlin's patient dust. "We are not your parish," he tells him. "No heat. We are your neighbor who brings soup and expects the container back. We will speak to you through doors." The apostle laughs then, delighted and furious. "You will tire," he says. "He will tire." He gestures at the sky as if the bowl were a cloud any clever man could disperse. "You will publish until you cannot lift your hand to type. Then we will rename your streets for you. We will type for him when he cannot," Weiss says, walking to the microphone because a porch can be a stage when speeches are receipts, not seductions. Dusk press at 1800. Citizens may bring their complaints. We will read them on air. A ripple moves through the crowd that is not applause and not fear. It is willingness. It is expensive. It is stronger than spectacle. The apostle does not waste the rest of the hour. He switches targets. He cannot steal the porch. He can steal the room above the porch where policy lives. He points his book at the compact and scratches little tidy footnotes under clauses that were written in crisis. He tries to make expiry a suggestion and dawn a mood. He tries to turn publishing into announcing, and then announcing into virtue signaling, and then virtue signaling into proof of weakness. He tries to reframe the hour his enemies own as a gift he gave them. Weiss raises her chin and reads the compact aloud again, without adjectives. Markov stands next to her and speaks about the arrest they made and the wires they cut and where and why and who signed the paper and where that paper will sit at 10 in the morning for any citizen to read. She reads the names of the dead. She stumbles on one and corrects herself and says sorry to the air, and the family hears it wherever they are and cries without rancor. Farah's lullaby drifts down from window speakers. It has borrowed a drum from a street in Lagos, and a call and response from Cairo, and a little electronic chirp from Manila, and a cricket from Melbourne, and a busker's chord from London. It is not a weapon. It is a habit. The apostle does not know how to eat habits that do not preen. "Berlin," he says in a last bid at dignity. "We will take your pain when they cannot." "Who are you?" a man calls from the crowd, not heckling. "I don't know you, Pastor. You never showed up to fix a stair." The book opens to the first page in a last-ditch appeal. The handwriting is beautiful. It names a God who loves your better self and will take your worse as an offering. The God is generous with forgiveness and stingy with exit doors. The page smells like rain. The page is a trap. He steps between book and eyes because he is allowed to place his body where harm is about to be done. He keeps the crozier wrapped by refusing the glory of breaking it. He pays with a tremor that runs from palm to jaw. He will shake for an hour whenever he lifts a cup. He will not hide it. The apostle watches him tremble and marks it in an internal ledger labeled pressure points. He will use it later if he lives. He will likely live. He was not sent to die. He was sent to teach contempt for limits. He failed at that today. He will adjust. So will Alpha Legion. So will the prefect. So will Berlin. "Enough for now," the apostle says, and makes leaving sound like magnanimity. He steps backward to the seam, which refuses to be cathedral and agrees to be door. He takes 2 priests with him, who are hidden in the crowd under good haircuts and the scent of new paper. He leaves behind a pamphlet disguised as a tract, disguised as an apology. He lifts a hand toward him as if offering a benediction. "You will not last," he says, not loud. He does not answer the taunt. He turns to the microphone that was a megaphone and is now a tool. "We made a rule," he says. Voice not theatrical. "We will publish our harm. We will publish our saves. We will retire powers we borrowed on time. I chose the path that lets you fire me." Markov glances sideways as if to say he does not work for them. He works with them. He hears the thought and inclines his head. "Even better," he says on air. "You cannot fire me. You can refuse to use me. That is more powerful." The disc over the gate thins and seals at coin. The crozier under the porch breathes like a sleeping animal that will wake to bite if anyone pets it. The shy stone at the tower hums under a medic's hand and behaves. He could collapse now and make everyone worry. He does not. He walks the rings. He walks the outer cordon and thanks a woman for telling 10 people to sit down and drink water. He walks the logistics ring and lifts a corner of a tent so someone can drive a stretcher in without bumping a pole. He walks the sanctity ring and pauses in the museum's shadow and admits that buildings are people, too, sometimes, when they hold names. He does not do this alone. Weiss and Markov and Mahler and Farah and Richter and Lenz and Rosenfeld and the janitor and the bus driver and the child with the crayon and the priest who made the sign and was told gently, "No, all do it with him." The hour ends. Markov hands the knife of emergency over in a small ceremony that takes 4 sentences and a signature, and the city watches. She looks worse than heroes are allowed, and better than statues can manage. "We return the teeth," she says. "We keep the spine." Weiss steps to a camera set on a crate. "Dusk press," she says. "Receipts." She reads. She does not flinch when she reads his pain. The city hears it and does not tell him to be strong. It thanks him for not hiding. The prefect is not in the sky. He is in a room made of ledgers on another world, writing a memo. Subject: pilot. Null sovereignty framework. Status declined. Notes: subject exhibits pathological consent fetish. Counter: patience. He files it under awaited fatigue. He drinks water. He thinks about calling it mercy. He does not, because words have to work. Alpha Legion splices footage from a kitchen into a cautionary tale about dependence. Their edit is skillful and fails anyway, because someone recognizes the countertop. "That's my aunt's flat," a boy tweets. "She chose to help. Don't call us dupes." The tweet is a pebble that makes a ring. The ring helps. Chaos does not leave, because men with books and crowns do not like losing to kettles and markers. Chaos rearranges itself into a better argument. It will be back. So will they. He stands under the gate as dusk decides to be gold instead of grey. He smells hot stone cooling and soup warming, and an ambulance's brakes and a crane lifting a 10-pole into correctness. He feels the bowl's attention like a hand on the back, not pressing, steadying. Weiss looks at him and then at the city and then back. "The 3 paths?" she asks, not on air. "2 were faster," he says. "1 was honest. People will hate you for choosing it," she says. "People will love you for choosing it. Neither is useful." He smiles with one corner of his mouth. "Your job is to make both irrelevant," he says. Mahler appears with a thermos. She holds it up like an offering to a god she does not worship. "This will make your hand shake less," she says. "It is tea. It has honey. You will not pretend not to need it." He takes it. His hand trembles. People see. He does not hide it. He drinks. The shake calms to a human tremor that makes him look like a person who has lifted something heavy and set it down correctly. Richter approaches, eyes on a list. "We detained 3, he says quietly. 2 word-bearers in suits and a man with a tool that wanted to be a crozier. We read their rights. We transferred them. We kept 1 promise and broke none." "Good," he says. "We count how many promises the day can hold. We do not invent capacity by lying." Lenz runs up breathless, holding a handful of little devices like beetles who want a purpose. "Streetlight spec," he says. "Routers, bells, shared porch nodes. No owners, everyone owns. No passwords, no secrets. It's ugly. It works. We'll pilot it in 3 blocks, Weiss says, not asking permission. And he nods because they are done asking him for that kind of permission. Farah texts a fragment of a lullaby to a choir in Lagos, and a neighborhood in Sao Paulo, and a hospital in Manila, and a line of commuters in Melbourne who hum into scarves while waiting for their trains to be allowed to move again. It is not central command. It is friendship. The Apostles' pamphlet makes its way through the crowd and turns into bookmarks, and then into shopping lists, and then into trash, some of which is picked up by people whose religion is called Clean Street, and who feel very smug about it in a way that might be the foundation of a better world if curated gently. Night lands. Lights come on. Most of them were turned off while not needed. Some of them were turned on by the city itself because someone forgot a corner that needed courage. And light is a courage machine when used with respect. He will sleep somewhere very public and not comfortable. He will wake 4 times to write down a decision, and once because a cat decided his lap was a good center of gravity. He will give the cat no title. He will publish in the morning with tea in hand and a tremor visible, and Farah's lullaby in the background, because the world is allowed to have melodies while it works. He is not fixed. He is bound. He is not holy. He is exact. He is not king. He is useful. He closes his eyes and sees the bowl of light and the sister's hand and the custodian's warning and the prefect's courtesy and the apostle's delight and the kitchen list and the crayon circle and the bus's diagonal and the priest's whisper and the janitor's mop and the line on a drone feed. Cost high. He opens his eyes and sees a city that chose to be difficult to conquer. It will do. The epilogue begins in a stairwell at midnight. A woman texts her neighbor, "Soup?" The neighbor replies, "Yes, please." She leaves the container on the porch and knocks and walks away, because porches are rules with kindness. In Lagos, a choir of young men and a grandmother in a scarf hum a song with no name and turn a mouth in the sky into a coin with edges too tidy to eat anything real. Their city council reads Berlin's compact and writes its own in Yoruba and English and Pidgin and publishes it on the side of a bus. In London, a bridge keeps its head when a seam tries to wear it like a hat. A nurse named Adaremi writes a complaint into the Dusk Press that says the ambulance triage skipped her block 3 times for a good reason, and that she agrees with the reason, and that she is still angry. The complaint is read on air and discussed like adults discuss pain when they cannot hide it and refuse to weaponize it. In Cairo, a muezzin, with a voice like water, pours it into the air, and people who do not pray in his language hum the notes, and the seam shrugs, baffled by courtesy, offered to a sign that was told it was not a shortcut. In Sao Paulo, a boy turns a router into a porch node and tells his grandmother the password is none. It is everyone. And she smacks his head lightly and says, "Then be helpful." And he is. In Melbourne, a tram driver brakes with care and watches a disc narrow at a cathedral that is also a library, and texts his wife, home late, helping hold a door. Alpha Legion releases a video that is funny and nearly lands, and a woman recognizes a piece of her kitchen towel in the background and says, "That's mine," and tells her friends. And the video becomes a joke, because lying at that resolution is hard in worlds with porches. The prefect writes a second memo. Subject: governance adverse to optimization. Sustainability risk. He cautions patience. He invests in null infrastructure proposals disguised as grants to cities who like the phrase noise abatement. He calls it civic improvement. He is dangerous. He will keep being dangerous. He will be met with audits and bells and children drawing circles and custodians who know what prefectural courtesy costs. The apostle walks in a hall not far from a book that eats heroes and promises to taste better next time. He licks the place in his mouth where he bit his pride today. He wants to design a crozier that writes receipts in someone else's name. He will try. He will be met at doorways by men and women who learn to wipe their feet and say no kindly. He stands at the gate in the morning with the city awake enough to argue. He reads the receipts out loud. He names the dead. He says sorry where it fits and refuses it where it is asked as flattery. He lists the compulsion he performed and the pain it cost and what it bought. He invites appeals. He sips tea and shakes. He is not embarrassed. He is bounded by love and law. He made himself a hinge because doors needed one. He will creak. He will be lubricated by attention, not worship. A child runs up with a sketchbook and holds up a drawing. It is not him. It is a door with a little roof drawn over it, and a book on a table, and 4 stick figures with different hair. The child is proud. He studies it with care. "We need a cat," he says. And the child adds a cat with a straight line tail that declares ownership of nothing. When night returns, a faint line appears in the very high sky, too thin for cameras and too proud for eyes. It is a vector laid down by someone who writes discipline as prose. It is watched by a crown that drinks light. It is watched by a bowl that burns law. It is watched by 1,000 kitchen lights turned off by hands that remembered to and did not want applause. He does not pray often where people can see him. He does now, not to the bowl, not to war, not to a god of sermons. He prays to the idea that people can be neither owned nor abandoned. He thanks the day for letting that idea live. He asks judgment to come when he fails and mercy to come when judgment is done. He asks to keep his hands clean of crowns and dirty with tents. A janitor sweeps Tempelhof under a sky that learned manners. She hums Farah's tune and adds a bar. She picks up a pamphlet and throws it away. She pauses at the wrapped crozier and spits near it without disrespecting her own mouth. She passes the shy stone at the tower and pats the wall as if it were a shoulder. The city sleeps like an animal that has learned a trick that will save its life. It will rouse at noises and grumble and refuse to be marched. It will go to work. It will argue with itself. It will expect receipts. It will cook soup and water plants and light candles and turn off lights and publish and sing. It will fight when it must, with courtesy first, and then with force measured in meters and minutes and names. He stands under the gate, smaller than legend, brighter than rumor, a man in a crown that burns softer now that it is in lawful service. He feels the cut in his shoulder throb when he thinks of shortcuts, and he thanks the pain. He is at last what he wanted to be, not a god, and not a king, and not a myth, a hinge on a door that belongs to someone else. He looks up and sees the Aquila as it is remembered here. 2 wings outstretched around a little roofline. The roofline is a porch. The porch is a rule. The rule is a kindness. The kindness is defended by men and women with spreadsheets and spears and mops. Above the blue world, where satellites pay attention and voids nurse grudges, the symbol goes out like a radio song with no lyrics. A double-headed bird not screaming but watching, sheltering a lintel. Ships that should not know it. Monsters that do not care about art's near. Friends who are waiting for an answer stop waiting and start planning. A bus pulls into a diagonal and blocks a street, so the elderly can cross at their pace. The driver mutters, "All right then," in a tone that has crowns in it and no need for them. A boy turns off a light he had left on. A woman texts, "Soup?" The neighbor replies, "Yes." He walks, he sleeps, he publishes. He bleeds when he has to and not for theatre. He refuses a throne on an hourly basis. He accepts being fired when the city chooses not to use him and still shows up with a tent pole. He keeps his hands open. He keeps the door shut when it must shut and holds it with his body. He does not ask to be thanked. He is. Codex note. Under the Berlin Compact and subsequent municipal harmonics, a sanctioned servant may compel only at civic thresholds to prevent non-consensual harm within active perimeters, with immediate public audit and expiry, binding power to receipts rather than personality.